Jonathan Taylor. There he goes again. 50, 40, down the far sideline. He might do it again. 10, 5, touchdown. I-N-D-Y.
The Indiana Pacers are in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Joseph Newgarden goes back-to-back, wins the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
This is the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome into the Van Morning Show. Thanks for joining us and taking us along for the ride wherever you may be, however you may be listening to us on the multitude of possibilities that exist. To listen to James Boyd, Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton back today, Jeff Rickard. Mark, it was we had people, apparently people were worried about Mark for a while yesterday.
Yeah, Mark's a popular guy.
I know, but they thought maybe he was sick because we were giving him a bad time. First we said he had called in the day before, then it was the night before, then it was the middle of the night. He got KB sick now, but no, we came clean. We told people later on that he had asked for the date off many, many moons ago, and that's how it works. It's one of his 424 PTO days he's built up over the years. I don't know how that
People
works.
did want a WrestleMania breakdown. I was like, sorry.
I know.
I mean, it was already planned. It just happened to be WrestleMania weekend, but it was a fun show. But I was not there. I was not off because of that. My dad got knee replacement surgery. He is doing well. Thank you for all who've asked. So, speedy recovery for him.
All right, welcome back. Big day for the Colts yesterday. Chris Ballard speaking with the media during the show yesterday. You had to leave and go check that out. Was it worth the trip over is the question.
I would say so. It was a little more insightful, at least in certain aspects, than I expected it to be. I did get KB's kicker question in. I didn't have to FaceTime you to do it, but I did make sure to get that in. And on top of that, I got your back. And then on top of that, we obviously, discussed the quarterback, Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, and then went on to also talk about the position that we've all talked about at length, since draft season has kind of approached, and that is tight end. So we'll dive all into that. But a lot of, pretty good nuggets, not a ton of insight, but important stuff. And then later today, we'll get a chance to hear from Anthony Richardson himself for the first time since Daniel Jones joined the team.
The multi-talented Kevin Bowen, I was impressed yesterday. Two brains working as one. I mean, it was fantastic. You're doing the show. You got a little earpiece in the left ear. You're listening to Chris Ballard. You're going back over everything. You're doing the show. It was impressive, KB. It was impressive. Standing on one foot for part of it, too. It was really nice.
Mark, glad to hear that your father is doing well. I certainly did not mention anything in any other way, shape, or form of why you weren't in the building yesterday. So,
you throwing James and I under the bus right now?
Well,
no, for the record, I have Mark's back. Let the tape show.
I'm just very hopeful that Mark wasn't listening.
I have ears everywhere, Kevin, even if I'm not listening.
Yesterday, in very fitting fashion, the Reds did what the Reds do yesterday. It was a busy 9 o'clock hour. So, James Boyd, you did a wonderful job, as always, amongst our other colleagues over there and asking some questions. Joel Erickson will join us coming up at 9, and here we are right now, 12 hours away from tip. So, very much looking forward to tonight. I have a feeling when Rick Carlisle joins us in an hour, he might bring up maybe a road team or two, getting it done in the NBA last night in Game 2 and how that could impact his team tonight. But obviously the Damian Lillard storyline will be front and center. He has been upgraded for what it's worth to questionable, and Doc Rivers, said whatever. He's great, and he looks good, and will he play? I don't know. So we'll wait and see over the next 12 hours what will happen tonight. Vegas, I think, thinks he's going to play. The line, pretty similar to what we saw in Game 1.
This would be, correct me if I'm wrong, JB, but this is the first time, if he plays tonight, if Damian Lillard comes back and plays tonight, or in Game 3 in Milwaukee, whenever, is it the first time he and Antetokounmpo will play together in Milwaukee in a postseason game?
Yeah, which is kind of hard to believe. Obviously, last year, Giannis missed all of round 1 with a calf strain. And so you think about the pairing that they wanted to have and what they envisioned for their team. It hasn't gone according to plan, but that could change tonight if Lillard is available. I know Rick Carlisle gave him a lot of praise at yesterday's practice when I listened back to the audio, called him a first ballot Hall of Famer. And obviously when you add one of those guys to the lineup, it can change some things. And then, as Kevin has mentioned throughout, this couple of shows so far, Lillard went off in Game 1 last year. So he is capable of having those moments where he can just take over a game.
You talked about that yesterday. How many points in the first half last year to remind people?
Well, really, he was unreal in Game 1 and 2. What do you have, 35 and 36 or something along those lines? And then he got hurt near the end of Game 3, missed 4 and 5, came back in 6. And from what I remember, I just thought he was kind of a shell of himself, even though he did have a decent output. So, yeah, I mean, we have to your point, this is the 8th playoff game between these two teams over the last 2 years, and we've yet to see these two. So, does he play? How many minutes does he play? Are there starting lineup changes? And I mean, do you just sit there if you're Rick Carlisle over the last 3 days and say, we're not touching anything? We're good. We're not going to make any I mean, I think that's a difficult thing for a coach in a playoff game. It's like, how do you view it? To be fair to the two teams that won last night, the Pistons were much more competitive than Milwaukee was in game one. And obviously the Clippers, were outstanding, throughout really their game there in game one as well. It didn't seem like Milwaukee, at least to me, had that same sort of output in game one on Saturday. So, is there anything? I mean, do you look at Tyrese Halliburton's night and just say, that occasionally happens. He won't have that happen to him again. Again, it just seems like you really have to nitpick to try and look for things that the Pacers really needed to improve on from game one.
Yeah, it feels like if it was a drag race and your car's just working splendidly, you take it back after a run and you just kind of make sure that everything is right where it was supposed to be. You break down the film if you're Rick and you say, hey, look at this, what you guys did. This is exactly what we're talking about. This is why this was so successful. You see that? When you do this, that happens. When this goes on, and then you just tighten maybe a couple of things up, like, just watch that, the way you drop off that little screen right there. But it's a great opportunity sometimes to praise guys and go, this is what we've been talking about, guys. Look at what you did. Let's keep doing that.
Yeah, I think to your point and to Kevin's point, hardest part about the playoffs is probably the contingency plans and things you have to sort of factor in, because you don't want to get a situation where you haven't, run a scout team where you've kind of masqueraded as a player having Lillard on the team or defending him or things like that, because he changes the math a bit. He's another creator. He can obviously score at will at times. And so you want to keep your identity, but you definitely don't want to be too naive to a point where it's like, well, whatever we do will work against anybody. Lillard isn't just anybody. He's one of the best players of all time. So I'm excited for tonight. It should be rocking again. And, the way I look at it is if he's available, maybe does that add to the tension that we saw at the end of game one where, Siakam and him got the double technicals. Halliburton was chirping there as well. And, I mean, we got both fan bases. I'm probably too much online, hating each other right now, but I love it. I mean, you don't like each other, that's fine. And you're competing for something that is very rare, and that's, a chance to advance in the playoffs.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how it all breaks down tonight. Starts at 7 o'clock over at the Fieldhouse. Airtime 6:30 here on The Fan. Of course, the Colts getting ready for the draft coming up on Thursday. And I can't wait, Kevin. These next 48 hours, we're going to hear this team is thinking about trading up. This team actually wants Shedeur Sanders. No, they don't want Shedeur Sanders. Oh, all of a sudden, Colston Loveland has this ankle problem. I'm not saying he does. This is the kind of thing we'll get online over the next 48 hours, right? It's going to be crazy.
It's one of sports' greater reality shows. I think that's probably the good way to describe the draft. And right now, as we sit here on Tuesday morning, all 32 teams have their first-round pick, which is not something you typically see either. So, I thought Chris Ballard had some interesting answers yesterday. I mean, maybe not in regards directly to the draft. Certainly you can read a million things into his draft answers, but, as much as he kind of led off with, it's thin at the top, and we feel like there's some depths in round 2 to 5. I mean, again, that kind of screams Chris Ballard trade back. If you look at his draft history of the 7 rounds in the draft, the second round is where he's had the second most picks of any round. So I don't think there's many GMs around the league you would say that about. Of if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's that second round where he has had, again, the second highest total. So is that going to be added to coming up on, I guess, Friday night is when it would be. I think that's kind of a big storyline to watch. And the whole Sanders thing I think is interesting. Frankly, not to turn this into should the Colts draft Shedeur Sanders, I don't think he would fit what the Colts want, frankly. And I don't know if we want to get into that or not, but I don't think he really checks kind of the Colts boxes. I mean, the Colts have, I don't think it's apples to apples, let me be clear. But don't the Colts have some off-the-field concerns about their current quarterback right now? Doesn't Shedeur Sanders bring off-the-field questions? And again, I don't think they're the same questions, but that would be.
With Shedeur, it's just about what entourage is he bringing with him, right? Or what kinds of things like that. I don't think there's a lot. And
as a quarterback, it's a very stationary 6'1" quarterback.
Yeah.
Is that also one that is going to win in today's NFL? So, again, I know it's a popular storyline. Anytime you get to quarterbacks and you get 2 days out from the draft, it's popular. I just don't see the Colts being that interested. I could be dead wrong.
We'll be discussing it all morning long. We'll get you ready to go for the NBA playoffs tonight. A couple of the stories to tell you about coming up in a moment here. Mark Dykton is back on the ones and twos. Corbin did a great job yesterday, but it's always good to see you. Always good to see
thank you. That's good to be back.
All right, that's the niceties for the day. We'll
Corbin
be back
played the
to
Reds
normal.
fight song yesterday.
Yes.
Well, that would not happen on my watch.
I know.
Never heard you play that.
No, no, never. Maybe if they make the playoffs, so probably not for a while.
Venmo'd Corbin after the show. Told him thank you for that.
That doesn't surprise me at all.
It's all coming up next.
The only
93.5
time I
and
Venmo'd you
107.5.
was for the Rudy movie, I believe.
By Butler Bulldogs Basketball. 2025-26 season tickets are on sale now. Registration for iconic Hinkle Fieldhouse premium seats runs through May 31st. Don't miss Hinkle Magic. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Fan Morning Show. Here's what's going on. The Pacers tonight, Game 2 against the Milwaukee Bucks. It'll be a 7 o'clock tip time over at the Fieldhouse. Airtime is 6:30 right here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. You can watch it on ESPN if you want, I guess. But really, if it's not on ABC for the rest of this series, you can find it with our old buddies, Kevin, over on FanDuel.
Just on FanDuel tonight. No ESPN.
Oh, it's not going to be on ESPN
No. NBA TV, I think the expectation is a local blackout for that.
All
so it is like a regular season game is probably the best way I can put it on our airwaves and or the FanDuel Sports Network. I believe you can illegally stream it if you would like. Don't endorse that, but Mark Dighton, go ahead. It's not like you have any other pop-up ads that you're worried about.
Oh, there are a couple that pop up. My God, are the wife and kids out of the room? Because that could be sketchy.
I believe I saw $6.99 to stream it.
I would say if you want to, you can go to Pacers.com or go.FanDuelSportsNetwork.com. And $7.99, no subscription needed.
There you go.
Kristen Neary and my guy, smothered chicken. Quinn Buckner.
I think you also get a 7-day trial, if I'm not mistaken. So if you haven't dipped your toes into the FanDuel thing, I think you get a 7-day free trial. So you can always,
which would include Game 3 and 4. Now, for what
Correct.
it's worth, Game 3 and 4, you will have national TV that I don't believe will be locally blacked out. But nonetheless, tonight, think of it like a regular season game.
Damian Lillard listed as questionable for this game tonight. He's been out, missed the last 14 games of the regular season in the first playoff game with a blood clot in his calf. He has been cleared for conditioning and, again, listed as questionable for tonight's game. JB, I want to ask you about Jarris Walker. Really impressive in Game 1. 8 points, 12 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, a block. He just keeps getting better and better when he gets minutes, doesn't he?
Yeah, obviously they chose him over Shepherd in the rotation for Game 1. I know that Jarris kind of seized the moment. I know he had playoff experience before, but this was like his real first, official minutes, or how do you want to, describe it, as far as getting a real chance to affect the game when it matters the most, and I thought he responded very well.
All right, elsewhere in the NBA last night, the Detroit Pistons even up their series with the New York Knicks at 1. They win at 100-94. Snapped an NBA record, Kevin, 15-game playoff losing streak for the Pistons.
And really, I think they've outplayed New York. I don't want to say thoroughly, but outside of kind of 1 second half stretch in Game 1, probably more like a fourth quarter stretch, Pistons have been the better team. So, yeah, Cade Cunningham outstanding last night.
What a player.
Yeah, he is really, obviously his first playoff experience. I had forgotten it had been that long since they won a playoff game. That is absurd. 2008, was it 15 straight?
It's been a while. Yeah.
Games? Just incredible. So, yeah, both road teams win last night. Vintage Kawhi Leonard for those that missed Game 2 out there in Denver. So, both of those series even up at 1-1. I have a feeling Rick Carlisle will sneak that in either with us at 8 o'clock or with this team when they meet up today. Both the road teams getting it done last night.
Yeah, the other road team, the Los Angeles Clippers, got playoff Kawhi, James Boyd. 39 points last night, and they took advantage of some key missteps by the Nuggets late. They win it 105-102. Nuggets had 2 3-point attempts before the buzzer went off, but they couldn't get it done, and the Clippers tie it up at 1.
Yeah, the Clippers survive. I was screaming at my TV, foul, you're up 3. Like, why are you letting them shoot threes? And I thought the pivotal moment in the game was when Aaron Gordon missed a dunk late, and it's like a point-blank dunk. This is a guy who's been in a slam dunk contest. And so Kawhi and them survive, and he was just like a robot. And as a fan of the game, I just enjoy seeing players who've gone through injuries bounce back and kind of show people like, yeah, I get all the load management jokes, and he isn't around, every other season or whatever, but obviously cares about the game because he wouldn't be putting himself through all these things to be back out there without having some love for it, and he looked very dominant.
All right, a little bit of college football news yesterday. Kevin, I don't know if you saw this. Stephen Daly, a transfer from Kent State, will go to IU now. Defensive tackle, had 4 sacks, 51 tackles last year. He's expected to contribute right away. Be kind of fun.
Boy, if I had something on the Kent State defensive end who had 4 sacks last year, Maddie would probably say, you know what, you can go sleep outside. So I'm sorry I have nothing on that end, but I have absolutely nothing to add.
Until I was looking around for this last night, I'd never heard of Stephen Daly either. So
I know Anthony Richardson Sr., James Boyd will be meeting the media later today. The Colts start their offseason program with the media sessions coming up. Shane Steichen amongst others, but it'll be our first time in hearing from Anthony Richardson, again, adding the senior. I think that was something he wanted to do last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I spoke to him about it. He was saying that his name has officially been senior for a while, but when he wanted to change the jersey, they had already printed him and all that. And so I think it would have been like upwards of 6 figures to try to buy all the jerseys, change the name, and so he's kind of waiting until this year.
One other Pacers note that I don't think many people care about because it's game 2 tonight. NBA draft order was settled yesterday, the 23rd. Overall pick for the Pacers. Looked at a couple of NBA mock drafts. I saw Danny Wolf in that range from Michigan, Walter Clayton Jr. as well. Again, no one cares whatsoever. They probably care about as much about the Kent State D end as they do about the Pacers drafting 23 overall. But nonetheless, that was announced yesterday.
All right, the Cubs took the day off to honor Mark and his dad, so they didn't play baseball yesterday.
My dad's a White Sox fan, so he would rather
but
the
that's
Cubs
how
lost.
popular that's how popular he is.
Yeah,
that's how it works. And the Miami Marlins somehow, some way, Kevin, manufactured a 6-3 win over the Cincinnati Reds.
We'll always have that 25-run day. We'll always have it, and Corbin honored it beautifully.
I saw that, and I'm like, man.
In a way, shape, or form, Mark never would have sniffed.
No, I was like, you probably want to spread those out a few games, don't you? Like, can we carry some of these over to the next series?
Sadly, we can't be very greedy.
Yeah.
All right. Later on tonight, the Indianapolis Indians on the road to take on the St. Paul Saints. Actually, that's going to be an afternoon game, to be honest with you. And that's what I've got going on this afternoon. Three NBA playoff games outside the Pacers game. Grizzlies and Oklahoma City Thunder play their second game tonight. The Timberwolves and the Lakers play at 10 o'clock. So
yeah, I'll be up late, after the Pacers game. And I've just decided I probably won't sleep until Wednesday night right before the draft because I'm just trying to get all my sports in before I'm locked in the Colts facility alongside Kevin Bowen and others as we go through every pick of the draft. My dad was like, it's got to be so amazing. And I'm like, a lot of it is, hurry up and wait. So we'll see what happens.
All right, coming up in a moment, more on the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Ballard met with the media yesterday. It'll be Anthony Richardson later on today. What do we expect to hear? We'll talk about that next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Are we on?
Yeah.
I was like,
I'm just going with the flow for a minute,
I was
man.
waiting for you to lead us in, and
I didn't want to get in the way sometimes.
You gotta.
Did you not see me bopping over here?
No, that's a turnover, man. You gotta throw me
that is not a
the
turnover.
rock or something.
Sometimes you gotta let it breathe, JB.
Oh man,
He's taking notes now.
Yeah,
He's learned.
Just thinking to myself, like I heard the tag, and I'm waiting for you to get us in.
Sometimes you just gotta let it go. You don't think everybody in their car was kind of doing the same thing we were for a second there?
Maybe, but they probably want to make sure that we're doing well in the studio.
Nah,
We didn't have a power outage.
I don't know who was on, but we have a false start. Whether it was Jeff or James,
Yeah.
we have a false start.
I mean, I'll take that one, I guess. But I'll be more assertive next time. That's what it is.
Start like that tonight. I can see Rick Carlisle already at the foul line.
Yeah.
Timeout to disgust. Here we go. Regroup.
Kevin was the center. His head was down. He held on to the football, and he looked around and he was like, why did my guards just jump? I didn't do anything.
Yeah, I saw him reach for the mic, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, I missed my moment.
No, you're good. We were just letting it go for a minute. It's okay sometimes. How you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing
the whole
good.
day of
I got my
being out there at the Colts yesterday. You
got
got
my
your hickory on.
Hoosiers
You're good to
gym
go.
shirt on, so I'm feeling, the vibes as far as the Indiana basketball goes. And I thought the environment, game one, was very fun. Excited for game two. I think it'll be even more interesting, like I said, with Lillard potentially returning, the tension there. They don't like each other. I enjoyed my guy Troy Pepper bullying people into wearing their shirt. Wear the shirt if you get the shirt. And so it should be exciting for game two for sure. But on top of that, I think that this is a pivotal moment in the series. If you can go back to Milwaukee up 2-0, obviously that bodes well for your future in this round. And then on top of that, like I said, I'll be later today over at the Colts facility again. Not getting used to going back there a lot, I guess, but excited to hear from Anthony Richardson Sr., which makes me feel a little bit older because I'm like, wait a second, how are you a senior and you're 22? But I guess it all works out. He's a pretty proud dad, too.
We should do spend a day with James Boyd on social media, and the people can come to work with you early in the morning. Then Then go over to the Colts facility, and then later on tonight going over to the field house.
I mean, you could try. You'll get arrested.
Track it and everything like that.
Yeah, no, I don't do that.
Dino Nuggets for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just saying you could
and
put
I
that
can't share
online.
Dino
That's
Nuggets.
all.
I just bought them. Man, KB, I bought Dino Nuggets last night from Meyer at like 11:15 p.m. Because I had to write a bunch of stuff, and I was like, let me run to the store real quick. Came back, caught the end of the Clippers game, and it's a life well lived as a 29-year-old.
That is awesome. I love that so much.
Let's talk about the game tonight. If Damian Lillard does play, Kevin Bowen, realistically, honestly, he hasn't played a game in over a month. I know he's Damian Lillard. He's got thousands of games in his muscle memory. I get all that, and he's as Rick Carlisle said, a future Hall of Famer. But is it realistic for the Bucks to expect that he's just going to come in and lift them right back to being one of the better teams in the NBA?
Well, I think it's the Pacers' job to find out what he's got in the tank. And that means on both ends of the floor, you've got to run him around screens, whether he's guarding, let's just play it out. He's in the starting lineup. Okay, he's guarding Nembhard or Nesmith. You've got to test him and, even maybe involve Andrew Nembhard more as a ball handler and a lot of screens that you send Damian Lillard through to kind of see, okay, where are you at offensively? I mean, frankly, he's one of the more gifted offensive players that I've seen play basketball. I mean, he's a world talent when it comes to scoring and shooting the basketball. So, this is the great unknown in this series, but I just don't think the Bucks have the firepower whatsoever to win on the road unless Lillard is able to give them something. And again, Doc Rivers yesterday, he wasn't like that crazy committed to doing substantial changes. Maybe that will happen, but he's just like, no, we got to get Kyle Kuzma and Taurean Prince the ball more. It's like, well, okay, you want the ball less with Giannis? So again, I don't sit here and necessarily hear from the Bucks wholesale changes. Obviously, Lillard would be one of those, but if they have to run it back with the same group we saw on Saturday, Doc Rivers doesn't seem to at least be publicly married to substantial changes.
All right, JB, your thoughts on, do you just try to run him ragged on defense and take away his legs for the second half?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime a player is returning from a certain condition or an injury, you want to test that. I know it might sound, a little rude, but who cares? I mean, if you tell me you got a sprained ankle or your thumb's bothering you, I'm going to smack the heck out of your hand if I'm in the game because that's just what you're supposed to do. And so I do think that it doesn't really change what the Pacers have done in the past against this team. They have picked up full court. They have pressured ball handlers. And obviously there's a different layer to it with Lillard because he can score so well. So you have to, kind of pick your spots. But I expect them to kind of, be on them, lay on them, push them, all those things to kind of just wear on them, because the biggest thing is perhaps not, what he can do as a player is just his conditioning and the wind and things like that. And I know Kevin was kind of mentioning yesterday, will we see like a minutes restriction at all, or will that be more fluid because of the stakes of this game? And let's say if it's a, one possession game with 5 minutes to go and Lillard's paid 20 minutes so far, are you taking him out? So I'm curious to see how they kind of navigate that, as far as even, I know we talked about the Pacers angle, but the Bucks' angle as well.
What about the Pacers themselves? Anything that you think that they try to do different or tighten up or shore up after a really impressive performance in Game 1?
It's a very, very little thing because I don't want to make too much of Tyrese Halliburton's Game 1. But, there's been times this season where I think I seem to recall maybe it was the Washington game earlier this year where, Tyrese wasn't in the game late. Rick Carlisle runs the first set that next night for him. Do you do anything just right out of the gate to get him going?
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to make too much of it, but is that something you would do with Tyrese? Frankly, there were so many times watching on Saturday, James, especially early in that game, I thought the Bucks looked beyond lost defensively in their man defense against the Pacers. I mean, I just thought they were in full-on scramble mode, and that was whether the Pacers were in the half court or not in the half court. So, again, does Milwaukee play more zone? And I thought Indiana actually was decent with their zone. I didn't think maybe as effective as they were against man, but I thought Milwaukee looked lost. And, Doc will chalk that up a lot to he just felt like offensively they were on their heels. That contributed to the other end of the floor. So, boy, I don't sit here with like massively wholesale changes the Pacers need to make, which, again, is a dangerous game. And James brought this up earlier. For a coach, you're kind of sitting there being like, wait, should we do anything different?
Yeah.
Because, they're probably going to throw a curveball or two. Should we be ready for that? Or, I think that's what makes these series so great. And, last night was a great example of it, of, two road teams winning game twos. We'll see how the Pacers handle. Again, expectations are still on the Pacers. This is still, hey, you need to take care of business. You don't want to give the Bucks any sort of hope, especially with potentially a Hall of Famer coming back either tonight or Friday.
Yeah, that's the thing you try to anticipate if you're the Pacers, right? You're going through your workouts the last couple of days, and you're saying, all right, if we were the Bucks, what are the things that we would try to do to slow us down a little bit, right? You start to try to self-scout and say, where could we be vulnerable? What are they likely to change coming into this game? 2
points I want to make. To your point, Jeff, I think Tyrese probably needs to take some shots in the paint. It seems like when he shoots the threes to start the game, he's a great shooter. I'm not taking that away from him at all. But like most players, it's like if you get 2 feet in the paint, get some short ones to go, maybe that opens up your game more. I thought he looked more comfortable when he started going, to the mid-range a little bit, got to the rack a couple times, and that's the Tyrese. I'm like, yeah, just get downhill maybe a little bit more to start the game. And I know a lot of that comes with the flow and passing the ball, but I would like to see him be a little bit more aggressive, not necessarily to score the ball, but just if you do get, in the paint, just finish the shot. You're 6'5", you can score, and float game is pretty good. And then number 2, how fun do you think it is to be like the scout team Damian Lillard? I've always thought that, even if you're
Quentin Jackson's living,
that's what I'm saying.
Living life right now.
He's like, okay, you got the ultimate green light for this practice, and so you get to just jack up shots or try to give it the best Dame Lillard impersonation. And I get it, you're definitely wanting to be serious about it. But that must be such a cool role to kind of help contribute to winning. And, I didn't have that opportunity much in high school. I couldn't shoot very well. So if, Mr. Jackson, if that's you, enjoy it, my man.
I always thought if you had to pretend to be one of those guys, you had to be a method actor and be like, well, I mean, I need his bank account as well. You need to pay me like I'm Damian Lillard so I can fully be Damian Lillard.
It, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But the one thing that you have to be aware of, if you're the Pacers, it just changes the entire complexion of even the sets of Milwaukee, because you guys know better than anybody, if Damian Lillard's in the game and he's bringing the ball up, you better put a body on him right before he gets to half court, because if he's a step over half court and he's open, he might just jack it up and hit it.
Yeah. I do have a Colts fun fact for you.
Yep.
Oh.
Related to tight ends.
How about this?
So I feel like I'm giving you Scotty Johnson vibes.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
Can you name the last tight end that they've drafted in the first round? That's a pretty fairly easy one, I think.
Yeah, it's Jack Doyle, right?
He was undrafted. No.
Doubt.
I'm teasing you.
Doubt.
Oh, no.
Come on.
Oh, no.
Well, I was here for the entire Jack Doyle career.
I don't know, man. You said that with a lot of confidence. And
Dallas Clark?
Dallas Clark.
To try and save us here?
Yeah, Dallas Clark.
You guys are. One thing I do love about you guys, but it also drives me crazy, you're ruthless.
So
you can't stop.
That was part one. But part two is,
Scotty might be out of a job.
Oh, my gosh.
James keeps on stumping Jeff like this.
Can you name the only other tight end that was drafted in the first round since the team, well, actually, in the common draft era?
Boy. So another first-round pick for the organization.
Yeah.
Was it back in the Baltimore days?
Gosh, I'm thinking like it was a John Mackey.
I was going to say, this is the only guy I can think of.
Yeah, so I'll give you the answer here.
Kobe Fleener was close to being a first-round pick. Second round. They actually went double back. They double-dipped there. Kobe Fleener and Dwayne Allen, second and third rounders back in 2012. I have no idea, James.
Reese McCall in 1978.
No idea.
So 25th pick, and he had a pretty solid career, but the point I'm trying to make is, we're screaming, take a tight end, take a tight end. We could talk about what Chris Ballard has done, but like historically, it just hasn't happened here. And so I was doing some research yesterday, and I was like, man, how rare is it for them to draft tight end in the first round? And obviously there's been different regimes. The game has changed a lot from what it was, common draft era till now. But nevertheless, I thought that was a very interesting, kind of factoid to
I'm going to stick with Loveland at 14. We'll obviously see how the next couple of days transpire, but I don't know. It might have been a throwaway line late in the presser yesterday, James, but I was, curious when Chris Ballard described, okay, what's kind of an ideal tight end. He mentioned at one point, can you be functional in the run game? Obviously, you would love to have an elite blocker, but I think if you're going to sacrifice in an area, would you sacrifice a little blocking or a little receiving?
Yeah, you have to sacrifice something, right?
You would sacrifice a little blocking, especially with the makeup of your room right now. Mo Alley-Cox, known to be a blocker. Drew Ogletree, thought to be more of a blocker. So that's where, again, I kind of come back on Loveland there at 14. I think I shared this yesterday, and I know that John will have Rick Venturi on, I think coming up, I believe, Thursday. So that'll be a must listen as always. But I was trading some texts back and forth with Coach Venturi over the weekend, and, he kind of goes back and forth on Warren and Loveland. Certainly loves the natural receiving ability of Loveland, which I do as well. But he is a little skeptical Loveland gets to 14. And, when we've had, I'm trying to think, like Daniel Jeremiah, I believe, is one of these people that have both of these guys in the top 10. I want to say Matt Miller from ESPN also had, if you're just ranking the prospects, also had Loveland in the top 10 as an overall prospect. Now, again, that doesn't mean you get drafted in the top 10, but those are some things to keep an eye on. I'll share a couple other Rick Venturi thoughts throughout the show, but I thought that was interesting of, we had Corbin look it up yesterday, 1973, to further your point, James, of just the scarcity in drafting tight ends, two of them taken in the first 13 picks. So in a draft where there's not a lot of offensive firepower, do we see those two push up the board, or do we see the flip side of it? Do we see, teams say, hey, guys, there's other tight ends in this draft. We can wait on the depth a little bit at that position. Chris, I thought, laid it out pretty well. It was a long answer, James, but he used the example of a center. If there's three centers you have ranked in round 1, and then the next center's not till round 6, you've got to factor that in when pulling guys off the board to draft. Tight end, it doesn't seem like there's that drop-off. Yes, there's two really good ones by all accounts, but there's some other guys like Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo and Aronde Gatson III, I think, is kind of an interesting prospect out of Syracuse as well. There are some others in this year's draft class.
To that point, were you a bit surprised that he wouldn't tell us how many first-round grades they have this year?
Yeah, I was.
I was like, am I reading too much into this? Could this be a move they're trying to make? I'm like,
that's in all seriousness, I think that is that's a trade back thought. Because I think if he publicly says that when they're drafting at 14, it carries a little more weight than if he publicly says that when they're drafting at like 22.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did read a little bit of that. What do you think about his answer on kicker? Because
I'm not buying that. I'm not buying it like completely.
That was more of a, we have full belief in Spencer Schrader versus we felt like Matt Gay was struggling or not living up to the contract.
I cannot buy that at face value because Spencer Schrader hasn't done much. That's the biggest thing. I mean,
he's done it for 2 teams, JB.
5 kicks, 5 field goal attempts between those 2 teams. End of the year on IR with, I believe, like a hamstring injury. He's healthy now, obviously, but the sample size is already small if you're a rookie, and it's super small if you're him. And, I thought that it was very kind of revealing. And he did start his answer off by saying, we think that Matt Gay is a good kicker. And, to be fair to Matt Gay, he only missed from beyond 50 last year. Those were his only misses, I believe. And so he was consistent to a certain degree, and you're putting a lot of eggs in that Spencer Schrader basket. And I just wonder if he can live up to it because, A, he's a rookie, and B, he's a kicker. And you'd like to see maybe more consistency before you hand him the keys. And that's something I'm definitely going to pay attention to throughout, training camp. They'll bring another kicker in, like he said, like they usually do. But, yeah, I thought that was a bit of a surprising answer, again, because as I reminded him, you're talking about a guy who's made 5 kicks. He's made all 5 of them. He's 100% from the field or whatever.
5 field goals. To point out, 2 of those are within a 20-yard
and none
range.
from beyond 50 yards.
Right.
Which is where he struggled a lot in college.
Yeah, only tipped at 2 past 40. I mean, I watched him at Notre Dame kick. I mean, he has a leg. I'm not questioning that at all, but he definitely has an erratic leg from north of 50, or at least did in college.
Yeah, I want to say it was like 42% or something like that from beyond 50 and beyond.
So I just listening to the answer, I'm like, why not just let them both compete? Or at least get through the draft, and then if you find the right undrafted kicker, or you find the right kicker to draft in round 7. He didn't sound like that yesterday, but who knows? Then you cut Matt Gay. That to me, I guess, is just what was a little bit surprising by that. It was a very public backing of the kicking upside of Spencer Schrader. Jeff, to your point, he's kicked for multiple teams. It's like, well, he kicked
That was Chris's point, by the way.
Right. You bring it up Chris's point. Well, he's kicked, 1 game with the Jets, 1 game with the Colts, 2 games with the Chiefs. Like, let's not act like it's a bigger sample size.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he didn't go on this deep playoff run with his team. Otherwise, I mean, if he had been, just being fair, if he was so great with his other teams, does he not stay? And I get that he probably was an injury replacement for a couple of guys, and you have your established kicker there, but I'm just saying, I don't know if he's even available if he had a really, really great season.
Yeah.
It's a Fan Morning Show, 93.5, 107.5. The Fan, KB, JB, Jeff, Mark Dykton on the 1s and 2s. We've got Anthony Richardson coming up later on today. What do you want to hear? What's the biggest question you have for him?
Just how are you going to process, and maybe he won't be all that revealing about it, but, everywhere you look, you're going to be looking at your competition. And not saying you didn't have that before, but I think it's more palpable now. And my mom would be proud of that word, by the way. Shout out to Lorna Boyd for teaching me some things when I was young. I was like, where'd that come from?
You've snuck in a few of those lately.
Yeah, I was like, wait a second. Lorna Boyd, I read the dictionary. I did growing up.
She had a bigger effect on you than you realized.
Yeah, but
back half of the dictionary.
Yeah, I think that, that's a real thing to have to kind of be a good teammate, which Anthony, by all accounts, from what I understand, is, and Daniel Jones as well, from what I heard from how he spent his time with the Giants. But you don't want him to necessarily do well because you want that job. Or even if you do want him to do well, I want to do better than him. So how do you handle that balance of this guy's my teammate, but you're not taking my job? And so, his thoughts on that whole dynamic, as well as, in a more tangible sense, what are you working on in your game?
Yeah, that's what I probably care about more. I think Richardson as a competitor will say the right things, and I think he'll act in the right way. I don't know if I've ever really questioned Richardson's competitive spirit. I don't know.
I think the tap out, at least nationally, and optically,
maybe the Monday through Saturday standard should be a little bit higher. Yeah. But again, when I watch him play football, play basketball, I feel like I'm James Boyd now. Play football, it's I don't see a soft individual out there by any means. I am more curious about, were there actual tangible, fundamental things that changed in your throwing motion with your first healthy offseason?
Yeah, and then Chris Hess as well. I know you work with the biometric expert.
Yeah, the guy that Josh Allen has really publicly praised before for getting him on track. Because, again, if indeed there are those changes, now this time of the offseason is all about integrating that so it becomes second nature when bleep gets real in training camp, the preseason, and obviously the regular season. Because I think that's a difficult nature to this position battle that I've talked about. you have two mediocre, inconsistent quarterbacks. You're giving them inconsistent reps. Does that mean we just get to the end of this and we still have inconsistent quarterbacks? That's, I think, the tough dilemma that you have here if you are the Colts, especially if Richardson specifically, Daniel Jones learning a new offense. Richardson is not learning a new offense, but he might be learning new footwork, new, whatever it is that could be new for him. And does that take a while for it to really become second nature to him? So that's different than last year. This time last year it was more of ramping it back up after the shoulder surgery and all of that. This is 3 months removed from, what was a healthy offseason. What's different?
I think the biggest thought process for Chris Ballard, this whole thing, first of all, deep down, he selected Anthony Richardson number 4 overall. He wants that to work out and be proven right. That's just human nature, right? But I also thought one of the things that he was really honest about yesterday is, truth be told, he's going to need both guys, given recent history the last couple of years and Anthony Richardson's physical availability at times. He's probably going to need both guys at some point this year.
Yeah, great point, Jeff, to bring that up. And I took that as a twofold answer. It's like, one, you want to make sure you're keeping the door open for both guys and building them up and, keeping all options open as long as you can. But two, the injury factor. Anthony has missed 17 games through his first 2 years.
I just think Richardson's going to get hurt
due to injury. But also, the other guy, Daniel Jones, he's missed 17 games due to injury through his first 6 years, but he's missed at least 2 games due to injury in 4 of his 6 seasons. So he's missed time here and there. And so either or, if you put him out there with their style of play, they're both dual threat guys. They're going to get hit when they're running the ball. Does that, change the math a bit as far as having 2 guys out there, not obviously at the same time, you're not running some small college offense or something like that, but I think there's a chance that we could see either guy in there just for injuries alone.
Yeah, I took that as Richardson will get hurt. Ballard has said availability is maybe his biggest concern. Do we have a color out tonight inside of Gamebridge? Are we gold outing it again?
I've not seen.
I kind of like to see what a neon look would be. Am I being too millennial with that comment?
No,
Are we a gold out market?
I liked the gold out.
Are we blue collar gold swagger?
I think if you're wearing is it City Edition or how?
City Edition, correct.
Yeah, if you're wearing those jerseys, then why not try to match what they have on the floor?
A white out with like a little neon script on it. Would you be good with that?
Yeah.
Match your jerseys.
Yeah, I think match the jerseys on the floor. That to me is always the cool one too, is when you can match the jerseys on the floor. So if you have white jerseys on the floor.
Very pressing questions for our next guest here.
I mean, I'm sure he's worried about the wardrobe and things like that for sure.
They're talking about Rick Carlisle, who will make his weekly appearance with the guys coming up in just a moment here. Getting ready for Game 2 against the Milwaukee Bucks tonight. It's playoff time. Pacers up 1-0. We'll get more info next on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The long wait for Game 2, almost over. 11 hours from now, we will be tipping off inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Pacers looking to go up 2-0 on the Bucks here, 7 o'clock. That tip, and it is Tuesday, and it is 8 o'clock, and you know what that means. We always enjoy our combos, especially the playoff ones, and we appreciate his time on a game day. Rick Carlisle, head coach of the Pacers. Coach, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm okay.
I know you are probably locked into Game 2 mode, but if you don't mind, if we go back to Saturday afternoon, I was struck right out of the gate just how impressive you guys were, particularly in the first half. Limited turnovers, defended the glass, obviously built that lead. What did you like most about your Game 1 effort?
Those things probably, in particular, those are basic things. The possession game is always really important, regardless of what sport you're talking about. So, we've protected the ball well in recent days and weeks, and so we obviously want to continue to do that. The rebounding battle is always one to look at, and in Game 2, I think there's a very good chance that they ramp up their offensive rebounding and crashing, and so we're going to have to be ready for that, and we're going to have to be on point with our crashing, and which means that we have to do it smart and not willy-nilly. I mean, we can't just fly in there and at the wrong angles and give up transition. So, the details are going to be very important.
I think you shared with us one point here in the last year or so that you guys track how many passes you have as like a key statistic. And I saw the stat kind of going around over the weekend. You guys led all teams in Game 1. I think the number was 317 passes you had as a team. I'm just curious, how does that compare to like a normal game, or like where the barometer is for you of like, okay, our ball movement is at the level that we want it to be?
Well, it's a stat that the league tracks, or somebody tracks. Maybe it's the camera things, the camera apparatus in the arena that does it. I don't know what our during the season number was. I believe it's more than 317, but probably not much. It's in the 300s. But look, it's just that's how we have to play. Some teams can gear their offensive attack around certain star players, and certain teams have different setups. Ours is we need to play with tempo, we need to play with ball movement, and we need to play with tempo defensively as well. And so defense and offense end up going hand in hand for us.
Rick, to pivot a little bit, I guess, forward, one of the things that I thought was fascinating after Game 1 was Miles saying to Benedict before Game 1, don't have any expectations, just go out there and play. And how much do you think that message can resonate, obviously after Benedict played well, but just throughout the series, to sort of go out there and play free if you can, and not necessarily put so much pressure on yourself because it's your first playoff run? His first game, was Game 1, and then whereas, Miles has done this 44 times.
Yeah, it's there are going to be challenges every game, and the obvious challenge going from Game 1 to Game 2 is something that I talked about yesterday with the media, and that is sitting on a Game 1 win for 3 days or whatever this has been is a challenge. They're sitting on a tough loss for 3 days. They went home after the game. They're looking at things. There's things that they need to do better. There's a lot of things we need to do better as well. But sometimes players in their minds get a certain number of points, in their mind, or a certain number of shots or something like that. And as a staff, we've tried to convey this in the most reasonable, measured way possible. Is that in the NBA playoffs, it's about a collective spirit. It's about a compete level. It's about entering the game and not getting finicky about where your first shot is coming, and just you get in the game, you move your feet, you hit somebody, and you compete, and then the rest falls into place. And so, that's part of the messaging, but you can't go too overboard with that either. And so some of these things you can't simply convey really until these guys go through it. And so, but what our job is to make them aware as well as we can of what expectations should be and what they should not be, and so and move forward from there. Game one we had some good things happen, and that was fortunate. But as Kevin just mentioned, I've been moved on from game one for quite some time now.
To move forward to game two, how do you prepare for a guy, you called him first ballot Hall of Famer yesterday, and rightfully so, in Damian Lillard, but just the possibility of his return, and how does that change the math if he is out there for your team?
We have experience playing against him. That's, we gotta hearken to that, both during the season and last year in the playoffs. And so, we're familiar with his greatness and all the things that he does to make a game very difficult for the opponent. And as to whether he plays or not, we don't know. I mean, obviously, Milwaukee knows. As expected, he went questionable on the injury report up from out, and so which is the same thing they had with Giannis last year too. So. It sounds like he's going to be playing at some point, and it certainly could be tonight, and we can't be surprised if he does.
7 o'clock tonight, game two. Rick Carlisle with us here on a game day. Coach Tyrese mentioned yesterday that he expects a little bit more zone from the Bucks tonight. Do you expect that as well? What other wrinkles are you anticipating?
Yeah, we'll see zone. We'll see switching defense with their end of the game lineup, which has been, it's been one of the best lineups in the league, down the stretch of the season. And of course that's, Porter, Green, Trent, Giannis, and Portis. Now, if it wasn't Portis, I believe it was Lopez before Portis came back from being out for a period. And these guys, they established a really tremendously high level down the stretch of the season, even without Lillard. And so I believe they won their last 8 games. And, 2 of those games, they had to beat Detroit back-to-back to end the season. And those games were very meaningful because those had seeding implications and everything else. And so, but this is all just banter. Really, it's game one's over. Game two's coming. Our expectations have got to be well focused, simple, and the basics of the game are still going to be the guts of the game.
What feels different to you, if anything, about coaching in the playoffs? Is it just more prep time between games? Like, gosh, it seems like eons since game one at this point. I mean, you mentioned the Bucks literally went home in between. I guess, what is different? Is it just the routine of seeing the same team over and over again, granted, spaced out between a 2-week period, or what is different to you about coaching in the playoffs?
Well, it depends. I mean, you look at the teams in the play-in. I mean, look what Miami went through. I mean, they lost. They won a game to get to the second game, and then they went. Then they were on their third city in about 6 days or 5 days or whatever it was, and they were playing the team with the best record in the East, and that was a close game for a long period in that game. In the case of if you're in the top 6 seeds, you have a longer stretch from the end of your last regular season game to your first playoff game. And fortunately for us, we played the first game on Saturday, which means you just can jump right into it. And if you don't play till Sunday night, I mean, that is a long wait. Think about it. That's over a week. That's longer than an All-Star break. And you have a bunch of practices in between, and et cetera, and you have to manage all this practice time the right way and hope you get it right. But yeah, it's an arena that, whether you're home or road, is going to be packed to the gills. It's going to be wired. It's going to be loud. Everything else, and you got to prepare yourself and your team, to be able to play with a high level of aggression on the one hand, and then high level of poise on the other, because there's going to be things going on out there you're not going to agree with.
Last one from me, Rick. When it comes to your defensive principles, obviously, Giannis draws a lot of attention, but what is the balance of, we have our defensive principles as a team, but we're throwing different bodies at them, like, because Nembhard might guard differently than Aaron Nesmith might guard differently than Siakam. So, do different players have certain things they're allowed to do or you prefer for them to do when it comes to guarding a certain player? And then on top of that, is it all within the confines of your defensive principles overall?
Well, in the case of Giannis, you're talking about a guy that's, one of the top 3 players in the world. That's proof. That was proven 2 days ago when he was announced as a MVP candidate. And he's just very unique and has been for many, many years. And so, we've got 3 or 4 guys that are going to guard him. Siakam's going to guard him. Nesmith's going to guard him. Walker's going to guard him. There are times when Turner gets switched on to him. We've put Nembhard on bigger guys from time to time, and Mathurin has guarded him some along the way. And then you're going to get situations in transition where you get cross-matched, and then all of a sudden, Tyrese is guarding him. And so there are rules that we want to stick to. We consider ourselves a system team, and by having a system, we can make adjustments within the system, but we don't believe in inventing new coverages every game. That's a recipe for confusion, and so we try to keep it simple. But there are times when great players force you to do some radically different things on short notice, and we always hope to avoid those things. But with a guy like Giannis or a guy like Lillard, everything's on the table.
Coach, we'll end with this, and as always, we greatly appreciate your time, especially, of course, on a playoff game day. I know you fielded a lot of questions the last couple of days about Andrew Nembhard, and the phrase, playoff riser was thrown around. I'm curious, when you get around the draft, and obviously Andrew played in some big-time games in college basketball, how much, I don't know, maybe it's a Kevin Pritchard question, how much does your scouting department or you guys look into maybe the mental aspect of some of these players? How can or do you try and evaluate, we know Andrew Nembhard does this well as a ball handler, defender, shooter, etc., but also if and when we put him into big-time situations, we don't feel like that moment will be too big for him.
Well, he was an experienced guy at Gonzaga. He had transferred to Gonzaga, I think, from Florida. And one thing that was compelling about him was that at the pre-draft camp in Chicago, he missed day one of the competitive scrimmage option. He had a hamstring or some kind of an ailment. And usually guys that are hurt on day one don't play game 2. But he was different. He wanted to play. He got out there on day 2, and he played his butt off. And one thing you could tell about him is that he's a guy that loves the game and loves to play and loves to compete. And so, this sounds silly, but guys that love to play, NBA basketball or love to play basketball are guys you really want to have on your team. And it sounds like an obvious thing, but not every guy loves to play the game as much as Andrew Nembhard loves to play the game, as much as Tyrese loves to play the game, and Mathurin and, these guys. So, that was that was something that struck Kevin about him. Kevin liked him during the year too, and I believe we got him at 31. I think Oklahoma City was at 32, and there was pretty strong evidence that if he hadn't gone to us at 31, he was going to go at pick number 32. And then, if you redraft that draft, and you guys, maybe you could take a couple minutes to do that one of these days on your show. Where would he be in the draft if it was redrafted? I mean, I think he'd probably be in the lottery somewhere. And so that was an important choice. And the thing that he brings to us is he just brings he's just some of everything, and some of everything equals being one of our most important glue guys. And we talked about it during the season. I mean, we were 5-10 without him early, and then when we got him back, his influence was a major factor for us as we get our season turned around, which started in December and went through the new year.
Yeah, scanning that 2022 NBA draft, I would say yes, certainly he would be a lottery pick if you redrafted it. Rick Carlisle with us every Tuesday, continuing that here in the postseason. Game 2 tonight at 7 o'clock. Coach, can't thank you enough. Good luck tonight, and hopefully we'll be doing it again Tuesday at 8 o'clock next week.
Okay, thanks, guys. Take care.
That is Rick Carlisle right there. I guess next Tuesday, James, we could be talking about maybe even a second-round matchup or Game 5. Obviously, Milwaukee would have to do its part in that, but the Pacers could be done the next time we talk with Rick Carlisle in terms of having finished off Milwaukee in a sweep. But obviously, things could change a little bit here coming up tonight. Darnell says towels, no shirts, towels tonight here at the Pacers playoff game.
That's okay. Wave them around. Be a good fan. Don't just sit them or throw them on the floor. Pick them up and use them. And use them when Giannis is shooting his free throws. Maybe that'll be a nice little crazy scene there. But I do want to give a shout out to Rick for throwing us an alley-oop for, I guess, a show idea. Maybe not during the playoffs, but that was
He's coming for Jeff Rickard's job.
Yeah, that was pretty funny, man. I was like, wow, he's an avid listener apparently. So that would be a fun one. But yes, to his point, Nembhard would certainly go higher in that draft class, and rightfully so, because I'm kind of waiting for him to taper off and to return to earth. But he continues to play really good basketball, really sound basketball. And if I get a chance to tonight, I definitely will ask him. Have you seen like that step-through move that he does going to the basket?
I think we talked about this maybe when you had just left yesterday's show.
Yeah, because I was like, man, this guy's like
And
Thor.
Someone brought up, I think in the YouTube chat maybe, or someone maybe tweeted at me, I think what makes it so effective, because like there's part of me that watches it, and he does it at least 3 or 4 times a game, and I immediately look at the ref. I'm like, are they going to call that? I mean, he just dislodged Brook Lopez by 6 feet.
Yeah.
And someone brought up, they don't think it's as much as the actual, like, push. I mean, he clearly extends.
Yeah.
But where he is able to, I think, A, hide it, or B, get away with it, is someone was mentioning, like, it's kind of like a half Euro step. Yeah. And now we're probably getting way into the weeds of this Andrew Nembhard move. But, like, because you do see when an offensive player, it happens a lot at the rim, when they go up to try and dunk or lay one in and they extend that arm, they'll call that offensive a whole lot. And so with Nembhard, though, they don't ever. And I remember he did it against Jokic a few times a few weeks back. Like, he does it to big guys. You know what it is,
though? I think that, and again, I'm not an expert on this, but I haven't played a little bit of basketball. He usually isn't trying to create the contact when he's in the air. He's on the ground. It's like a running back. So he'll run, and it's still a contact sport, basketball. So it's like if I get my shoulder into you first, get you off balance, boom, then you're retreating, and I can just stop. He'll decelerate, and that creates like that little pocket of space where you can just lay the ball up. It's a very unique move that a lot of players, I'm sure, are capable of doing, but it seems like he's mastered doing it at full speed. Like he'll be going full speed, boom, hit you with my shoulder, and by the time you're trying to slow down or try to recover, I'm already at the rim. And so that's a very, sound move, and something, honestly, pass that along to Mather and pass that along to Halliburton. Mm-hmm. Or is it something that's just your thing because it seems to work to a T? And it certainly works when, again, talk about offensive fouls, Kevin, they're not calling a lot of this stuff in the playoffs. I mean, I saw Giannis a couple of times in game one, and I'm like, man, that's a big chicken wing right there, big elbow. But if it's more physical, that move helps you in those moments.
Well, and I feel like I sound like kind of like a young, young basketball coach in saying this, but like playing with pace is one thing, but like knowing when to change your speeds, I think is what truly makes a player effective.
100%.
It's like, yeah, you can be, Joseph Newgarden in qualifying pace, but at times, can you start? Can you stop? Can you do those things that really get a player on their skates?
Yeah.
And I think Nembhard, because he's not, I wouldn't guess he's the most athletic testing dude when you compare him to other 6'4", 6'5" guys in the league, but yet
he's strong, though. I would like to see what he's benching.
Yeah, no, that is a good point.
Man, he puts that shoulder in you, and I'm like, this is like getting punched by the Hulk.
Could look a whole lot different depending on Damian Lillard's availability.
Yes,
for tonight.
The rotations could be interesting because we saw Thomas Bryant minutes because they played Jericho on the Bucks' side, so that made sense. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, Dame, if he's in there, I think we expect a lot more Nembhard on him.
We're getting a lot of questions about this, and so just to reiterate to everybody here, tonight's game is not on NBA TV from a local standpoint. It will be blacked out locally. So the best way I can kind of summarize how to watch the Pacers tonight, think of it like a regular season game. FanDuel, Chris, Quinn, JJ, that group. That's how you watch it in the regular season for 90%, 95% of those games.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you watch it. You can stream individual games for $6.99. No subscription is needed for that. You can do that. Obviously, our airwaves as well. Coverage 6:30.
One last thing. If you do have access to ESPNU, it will be on there as well. That will not be blocked out.
I thought that was Friday.
I'm sorry. Yes, that is for Friday. My apologies.
Yeah, Friday. Yes. ESPNU. Yeah. Again, we can confuse the hell out of people.
Yeah.
So tonight,
thank you, Mark.
Think of it like a regular season game. I think obviously you can watch Chris, Quinn, and JJ all of these games.
Yeah.
Here that are not on ABC, as Jeremiah Johnson shared with us yesterday. But yeah, for Friday, for those that do, I guess, have access to ESPNU, I do believe you will be able to watch that opposite our guys here locally. All right, Mark Dykton, let's hit it.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. 2025-26 season tickets are on sale now. Registration for iconic Hinkle Fieldhouse premium seats runs through May 31st. Don't miss Hinkle Magic. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
Favored by 4.5 tonight. It is the Indiana Pacers at home against the Milwaukee Bucks. James Boyd, a starting lineup change or two. Let's say Lillard doesn't play. What do you think the Bucks do with their starting lineup?
I don't know. I don't know if you can have. You have to put Gary Trent Jr. I think in the starting lineup. Maybe over Taurean Prince. I don't know if you can get rid of Kyle Kuzma. He had a rough game, but he does give you size. So maybe Taurean for Gary. But I think Gary probably needs to be in there. He's making some shots.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I'll be curious to see. Again, Doc Rivers hasn't been too public with any of these wrinkles. Do actions speak louder than words? Rick Carlisle with us earlier, expecting a little bit more zone here, which kind of falls with what Tyrese Halliburton said yesterday. So again, 7 o'clock tonight, Game 3, 8 o'clock Friday, and brace yourself for Game 4. That's the 9:30 tip Sunday night up there in Milwaukee. Kind of a quiet day, Major League Baseball yesterday. I'd like to not mention the Reds score, but I'm a man of integrity. The Reds lost yesterday. Indians on the road for quite some time there.
I always laugh at Mark's little
Is it
smile.
necessary, man?
He makes no eye contact. He just smiles and kicks you in the ribs.
I think it's a lot lower than that, to be frank.
It's like a brotherly relationship.
Yeah.
He rips the Cubs, I rip the Reds. That's how it works.
Yep.
That's one way to describe it. It's April 22nd. Very healthy for our relationship here over the next 6 months. Pacers are picking 23rd in the draft. That was announced yesterday. James Boyd, you've got a busy day again over at the Colts complex, do you not?
Yeah, it'll be a fun one. Talking to Anthony Richardson Sr. now for the first time since Daniel Jones has joined the team. Curious to hear his thoughts, as well as catching up with Shane Steichen. I believe Michael Pittman Jr. will speak as well, Zaire Franklin. So lots coming later from that.
On the other side, a couple Rick Venturi draft thoughts. We'll share that conversation with the coach over the weekend. What is he like? What's he looking forward to here coming up round 1 on Thursday night? We'll hit on that and much more on tonight. Game 2 inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. We saw splits last night in the NBA. Both the road teams, Detroit and the Clippers, getting it done there to even up those series. The Pacers will try to avoid that coming up tonight. Much more on that. Fan Morning Show right here on 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
JB, we'll start now. Is that cool?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. When we come back from break, we break, back into the show.
You got to have some flow. You got to go. You got to let it go.
Yeah,
let's
breathe. Flow into the show. We were stuck in neutral for there.
Jeff teaching James about flow. It's certainly not what I had on the bingo card at 8:31 on this Tuesday morning.
It's necessary sometimes. You guys did a great job, as always, with Rick. Initial impressions, JB, on that conversation?
High praise for Andrew Nembhard, and I believe Rick Carlisle gave us some homework, and I was like, wait a second, I didn't come here, for that. But always good to hear from him, and obviously, like I said, high praise for Andrew Nembhard. Excited for Game 2, and he was very serious. I mean, Rick is sometimes a pretty serious at times, but I think this playoff setting has made him a little short sometimes with answers and certain things. You could tell he's like, Game 2, ask me about Game 2, because Game 1 is like, way back when.
Game 2 tonight, 7 o'clock at the Fieldhouse, 6:30 airtime here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. You guys figured out, with the help from one of our listeners, it's towels tonight, right?
Yeah, so get your towels, wave them around, have fun with it. And also, side note, if I ever get anything that comes to me in the stands, like if they throw little balls out there or T-shirts, if you are a grown man and I'm walking down some corridor trying to find some kid, do not lean over the railing to ask me to give it to you. You're grown.
Gosh, have you really had that happen to you?
Yes, it's happened the last game. That some ball popped up, hit my laptop, so I grabbed a little ball, and I'm trying to walk and find. I just try to find a kid that's 10 or under, and this grown man is leaning out of his suite, asking me to give it to him, and I must have gave him the nastiest look of disdain. Just like, no, there's no chance I'm giving this to you. So I gave it to a kid in a Halliburton jersey,
right
I believe, and he was,
Uncle JB
over the moon. And I'm like,
it.
this would mean so much more to him than you and your beers in your suite.
True story. KB, we got Colts coverage with the draft coming up. You guys have done a great job leading up to this. Chris Ballard spoke yesterday, looking for Anthony Richardson today. And I know you're looking forward to a conversation that the JMV is going to have later this week, but that you've had offline too with Coach Venturi, right?
Let me throw in one more on Pacers Game 2 before we transition to Rick Venturi. We all are in agreement here. We want the countdown from 10 to be rapid pace with Giannis at the foul line tonight.
Yeah, throw him off.
10-9-8-7-6-5-4-3-2-1. Something like that.
Yeah, and then maybe next time you go to 8 and then you just stop all of a sudden.
Because Doc Rivers...
I think you should do that.
Doc Rivers was a little petty yesterday saying the fans count too fast. He goes, I watch the officials. And, when the officials do, they kind of bring the arm into the chest, and that's how they count. He's like, if you watch the officials, they're at a 1 count when whatever Turner's block, or frankly, I think it's all 18,000, are at 3. Well, if they really want to hear fast, I say it's a count down. Giannis is, I think, used to the count up now, and he kind of rises at 9, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like to see the count down tonight.
Do you think Max and Rosie would get a kick out of that?
Oh, my gosh, that would be – I'm honestly – I'm trying to think. I guess it was, nap time for Max on Sunday or on Saturday when they played. Yeah, I will certainly be tuning in tonight and show them and make sure that they can hear it. Yeah, that'll be their favorite part of the game.
Bringing them up right, KB.
1,000%. I was trading some texts with Rick Venturi, who will be on with John coming up on Thursday. They have, I'm pretty sure, an annual draft convo. Always enjoy that. But, Rick mentioned kind of at 14, he is a big Colson Loveland guy. I think it's fair to start there. He honestly has some curiosity if Loveland will get to 14, which we really... James, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've seen too many mocks that have Loveland going before the Colts. Warren, it seems like over half of them.
Right.
He's going before the Colts. So something to keep an eye on. He mentioned that he also likes the top 3 offensive tackles. Will Campbell out of LSU, Kelvin Banks out of Texas, Donovan Jackson.
What a football guy.
Out of Ohio State.
Lives for it.
He feels like those are tackles that can play guard. Which, I think if you look at the makeup of the Colts room right now, you have on paper the opening at right guard. This time next year, you might have an opening at right tackle, depending on how you view Braden Smith. And, I guess how Braden Smith certainly views his football career as well moving forward. A couple other names that Rick Venturi threw out to me, like Shamar Stewart, the defensive end out of Texas A&M, likes the big fella out of the region. That would be Kenneth Grant, who played at Michigan, Landon Jackson, defensive end from Arkansas. So just some other names to kind of keep in mind here if it's not tight end at 14.
And it's possible. We keep seeing all these mock drafts. Take them for what they are. They're people trying to guess and figure out everything else like we are. But it's possible both those tight ends are gone at 14.
Yeah, it's possible. It certainly is. I mean, they're talented guys, and like we said earlier, Corbin did a great job of kind of, breaking things down of how rare that would be to see them go that high in the draft. But at that point, I'd like to maybe throw this out there to you guys. So we have a beat writer mock draft. I don't know when it's actually coming out. I would assume before the real draft. But I won't tell you who I picked, but I tried to trade back, and I couldn't. And I wonder if that will be a difficulty in real life. Like, we talked about the talent in the draft, and maybe it isn't as much high-end talent, which I think Ballard used those words yesterday. It's good depth, maybe not as much high-end talent. Will that affect your ability to trade back? Because I think sometimes when we do these mock drafts, we do like our, what could happen scenarios, it's like, oh, you just trade back. But, like, you need two to tango. And so can you trade back, and how far are you willing to do it if you're saying you want to slide from, let's say, 14 to 18? Like, is that a real possibility if other teams are thinking like, nah, you know what, we don't want to move up for anybody else?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And I think what also is kind of challenging for me, James, when I weigh all of this is I can hear the people that say, enough of trading back. You've done it, 4 times in round 1, I think?
Yeah.
Now, there's times where I think it really, really works. I mean, 2018 is probably the best example of it under Chris Ballard. And I'm talking about Ballard here. 4 times you've traded out of round 1 or further back in round 1. But, when you traded back 3 spots or Quentin Nelson, you got additional picks. I think Braden Smith was one of the additional picks that you got, or, he was a part of that huge haul that you turned into something pretty good. And, for the most part, you still got the player that you wanted. I think they would have been content with Nelson even higher. So I think that's what makes it difficult about the trade back scenarios. It's the draft is such a crapshoot. So if you're trading back, and let's say you add an additional 3rd round pick just to play it out, well, chances are you are like 50% from a draft pick hit standpoint. Well, if you're 50%, then obviously if you have 2 picks in round 3, that's a lot better than chances than if you just have 1. So I understand doing it, but yeah, to your point, James, it definitely takes 2 to tango. I did a draft scenarios on our website right now. There's 4 of them up there. 2 of them, they basically stay pat at 14 and take their pick as it is. One of them they trade up, and one of them they trade back. And I guess to bring up the trade back scenario under this, James, I had them trading back from 14 to 17. That's Cincinnati. Cincinnati coming up for a pass rusher if you want to play out the Trey Hendrickson situation. So in trading back from 14 to 17, I had them taking Jahad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama. Then with their normal pick in round 2, Elijah Arroyo, tight end Miami, they added a 3rd round pick from Cincinnati under this situation. So ironically, they now draft back to back, 80 and 81. I had them taking Darius Alexander, a defensive tackle from Toledo, and then I had them going with the Purdue kid, Marcus Bowe, the offensive lineman, who can play, I think, in the interior at 81. So when you look at that on paper, there might be some people out there say, I would take Jahad Campbell at 14 overall, where they're at right now. Well, if they move back 3 spots and take them, and then you get a tight end at 45, you get a defensive tackle at 80, and you get an offensive lineman at 81, if we were to rank the needs, you're like crossing off a lot of those needs.
Certainly. And fairly high picks for all those guys, too.
Right, and you're still in the first 3 rounds with all of that. You're probably, in the first 2.5 rounds when you look at it from that standpoint. Now, again, some would say, wait, was Warren and Loveland both off the board there? And are you really going to wait on getting the 3rd or 4th best tight end in this draft class? That's something you're going to have to weigh.
The other thing I keep going back to, and I've heard this from other people too, but Chris Ballard not telling anybody how many 1st-round grades he has on guys this particular year for reasons he wants to keep to himself, obviously. But I don't know that there are a lot of teams that have more than 18 or 20 guys with 1st-round grades this year, James. It may be tough to trade back.
Yeah, did you appreciate him telling us, like, the way you all look at your board and our board is totally different. The outside world, you have no idea, which is very true. I mean, we can, talk to her blue in the face about certain prospects.
I'm curious what that means for Warren and Loveland. Like, when he said that out loud.
Me, I took it as like, and maybe I'm just, too bullish on my own thought process, but there just isn't this huge gap between the two. I think the narrative here in Indianapolis, because when I listen to a lot of shows and read a bunch of stuff, here in Indianapolis, it's like Tyler Warren or nobody else. But I do think that there's a lot of boards out there with Colson Loveland as a first tight end, and then either or being very close in their rankings or in how you view their talents. I don't think there's this Tyler Warren gap, Colson Loveland, everybody else. I don't view it that way at all.
All right, coming up in a minute, we will talk a little bit more about the Pacers getting ready for Game 2 against the Milwaukee Bucks later on tonight. Always interested in your thoughts on the Colts as well, 239-1070. If you missed any of the Rick Carlisle stuff, we'll play some of it back coming up in about an hour at 9:45. Happy Tuesday. Thanks for being with us. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Along with Kevin Bowen, James Boyd, Mark Dykton, I'm Jeff Rickard. Thanks so much for taking us along for a ride this morning. Game 2 of the NBA playoffs between the Bucks and the Pacers tonight at the Fieldhouse. Airtime 6:30 here on The Fan with the great Mark Boyle, and you can watch it on FanDuel like you might normally do if you want to see that. Those things are coming to a close. Next year, you don't get any local broadcasts in the playoffs, sounds like. Not good. I'm curious, though, the rest of the NBA, we talk about guys who just continually show up. And you talked about Kawhi Leonard a little while ago. He's been hurt, and he keeps fighting back and fighting back.
Respect.
Good Kawhi showing up last night with a huge effort as the Clippers were able to get past the Nuggets in Game 2 of their series. We saw the other night Jimmy Butler come up big with I think a 37-point performance, something like that. It's just always amazing in big spots at big times how consistently some players just show up.
Yeah, it's the old debate of, like, are they just consistently at that level, or do others just kind of, like, wilt? You know, are they a riser? I guess this goes back to the question we asked Rick Carlisle about 20 minutes ago. Is Andrew Nembhard a riser, or do others, maybe just not play to that level? And there were some others last night that we should mention, too. I mean, Norman Powell hit a huge three late for the Clippers. He's had a great season for those that haven't followed the Clippers. And I totally I forgot until the series started that Dennis Schroeder was on the Pistons. And he was huge last night.
Hit a big three.
Again, another big one late in that game. And, you would think with Cade Cunningham, maybe that would be a little redundant. And you know what? It pains me to say, and honestly, I probably hope both teams could lose the series, Pistons and Knicks. But, like, this goes back to Rick Carlisle on opening night. When he joined us and he described the Pistons on opening night, he talked about them at a time. I was like, man, he's talking about the 72 Dolphins. I mean, all of a sudden, he's just, like, rattling off all these Pistons players like they're unbelievable. And if you watch them, I mean, Malik Beasley here and, Schroeder here and I guess a little bit of Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway Jr., they have added some guys that have kind of been there before. I mean, honestly, I probably think of Schroeder a little bit more from what he does with Germany from an international scene than necessarily what he's done from the playoffs. But, that I was surprised Rick didn't mention that with us when we just had him on, that both the road teams won last night. But certainly that was something that stood out to me of the evened-up series with Detroit and L.A.
Well, you talk about the Pistons and what they've got going on, and their young guy, Cade Cunningham, showing up big in his first real playoff explosion. He had 33 points, 12 rebounds in that win, and that's the guy that they're counting on being their man for the next decade plus.
Yeah, rightfully so. I mean, he looks like he's been there before, which is the best compliment I can give you. I mean, he was poised. And I think the size factor always helps because he's 6'8", so he can just see over the defense. He can kind of do whatever he wants out there when he gets in that mode. And so I think that usually when you have the taller players and they're like the focal point of your offense, they're able to carry more of the workload for you and initiate offense and really, keep you afloat, because there are a couple of times there down the stretch. I know Schroeder hit a big three, but there's times where it's just like, I need you to be better than the guy in front of you. And that's what he was in those instances. So, we'll see. I think that going back to the playoff riser conversation, I think Kawhi is just an all-time great. He's this good all the time when he's healthy. Jimmy is good in the regular season, but he really turns it on in the playoffs. We've seen that. And then Nembhard's kind of like an outlier to me just because, he isn't necessarily at this level through the regular season. And I get it's still a small sample size in the playoffs, but something about it, he's kind of flipped that switch. And I thought in Game 1 he's got him off to a hot start, and he'll certainly have his hands full tonight if Lillard returns.
James, I just saw this, the anonymous NBA player poll. Have you caught this up on your guys' site there?
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to look at it just yet, but I do know that, there were some Pacers involved in that, and as well as some other teams. Well, all the teams.
You want to talk about something that I hope the printers are working over there off of Delaware Street, and Tyrese Halliburton might have some reading material in his locker here later today. The most overrated player. 90-player votes cast. Who is the league's most overrated player? Number 1 on the list is Tyrese Halliburton.
Oh, I love that. That's hate, boy.
Yeah.
That is hate.
Boys, let's hammer the overs for tonight. Mark Dykton, look up all the player props for Halliburton. We have he had single digits in Game 1. We are hammering the over here. 33 players received at least one vote, so pretty spread out.
I like it, though. Embrace that hate, Tyrese.
Halliburton received 14% after he got 3% last year. What? I'm curious, why the rise? I mean, I don't
think
know.
these are all Pistons and Bucks players.
People are pissed that he made Team USA.
No. This is Pistons and Bucks players. Don't let it fool you.
The little write-up here from The Athletic. Perhaps our responders think Halliburton got too much credit for that playoff run after Indiana's first-round opponent last year was missing Giannis Antetokounmpo because of an injury, and after Indiana's second-round opponent, New York, dealt with a bunch of injuries. For what it's worth, 2 and 3 on the list. Rudy Gobert with 10%, Trae Young with nearly 9%.
And I
get it. I would boo too if I had to be an Orlando Magic fan. I get it.
Magic fans as well.
Yep. What a great pull, Mark.
He's the best. Yeah, even Jimmy Butler was fourth. Okay.
LeBron's on there. It's a lot of. We got Kyle Kuzma on there. I don't know if he's ever been overrated.
When I say that he's trash, I mean that.
All right, Halliburton first quarter points over under 4.5. Okay, there's an over. I'm creating the parlay right now. Alternate points. What do you think? Just set it right at 20. Over 20 for him tonight.
I'd take over on that.
Okay. How about made threes here? What do I need? About 3.
This might be his best playoff performance to date coming up tonight.
Well, he's got this list that came out. He's got post-WrestleMania vibes, so he's going to be chucking it tonight, I would hope.
I would think.
I do think he has to knock down some shots, though, just because, I don't know if you can get through the series and expect your best players not shoot the ball as well and still kind of, stack these wins. I know it was a decisive win in game 1, but expecting a better response from Milwaukee as playoff games tend to go, I think Tyrese definitely has to shoot the ball better.
Well, and again, James, that's where I exit this weekend and think there's still more there for the Pacers. There's still another gear. Even if you want to say, all right, Nembhard's not going to do that every night. Siakam might not have 25 on the efficient night. Turner maybe doesn't go 4 or 6 from 3. All right, if all of that happens, what if Halliburton has more of a normal scoring night? What if Mathurin, hits a few? I think he was 1 of 6 from behind the arc. What if a few more of those go in? So, that's where I would be surprised if the Pacers have the same effort tonight as we saw with New York or Denver last night. I'd be very surprised and frankly very, very disappointed. I mean, Les Lillard all of a sudden looks like, prime Portland making a run to the Western Conference Finals. Lillard, I don't see the Pacers losing.
It would be very disappointing for them to come up on the short end of the stick for a lot of different reasons. We'll continue talking about that in a moment. If you missed any of Rick Carlisle with the guys earlier, we will play some of it back for you coming up at about 9:45 this morning. In the meantime, we'll get you ready to go for the NFL Draft and a couple of other things along the way that I'm sure Mark Dykton has stored away right up his sleeve there that I can't wait to get
Joel A. Erickson coming up.
Yeah. Talk Colts.
9 o'clock hour.
That's next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
9 o'clock hour. If you're taking us with you to work, we appreciate that. Hopefully we'll make it worth your while. We'll be talking about the Pacers game 2 against the Bucks a little bit later on. But right now, the National Football League, the NFL Draft is coming up on Thursday. We've been talking about it really ad nauseum and with good reason, and a lot of different things to talk about and a lot of different ways this thing can go. And we bring in one of our other experts to tell us about what he's thinking and hearing and seeing right now. Joel A. Erickson covers the Colts for the Indy Star. You can see him over at Fox 59 and CBS 4 as well. He joins us on the Payless Liquors hotline this morning. Good morning, Joel. We're getting closer and closer. Are you more convinced on what they're going to do on Thursday or less convinced of what you originally thought they might do on Thursday?
I think I would say I kind of feel the same way I did. We talked to Chris Ballard yesterday. Those press conferences, I think he'd tell you, I think most GMs would tell you, are probably our least helpful of the year. I think a lot of it just depends on, do the tight ends fall? Do they feel like one of those guys is a 3-down player? They've emphasized that a lot. And then if they don't, I do think that there's the possibility for maybe a surprise position group. But yeah, they said a lot of stuff about what they've got on the roster, and I know some people said that yesterday. Took that yesterday as, they're not going to draft a tight end. But he's also said that many times in the past about other position groups, and then promptly taken the position group that he was talking about.
This is why I like having Joel in here. Give us the real Joe, because I was like, wait a second, this ain't what you said this before, and you have definitely drafted for need. But one thing that we've kind of discussed earlier on the show, Joel, is what'd you make of him not telling us how many first-round grades they have this year when he's done it in years past?
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if it's a reflection of the simplest explanation to me is that they believe what the rest of the league reportedly believes. If you've been paying attention to national reporters, the top of this draft is supposed to be not great. Ballard pretty much alluded to that yesterday when he said, he feels like it's really deep in the middle rounds. That it's not necessarily as deep in the top. I wonder if that plays a role in it. I wonder if he didn't tell us the first round grades because, if it's, I think normally it's around 15 to 16 or something like that. KB can help me out on that. But if it's like 9 or something like that, then maybe it tips his hand a little more.
No, I think that's a good ballpark number. Joel A. Erickson with us here from the Indianapolis Star. Joel, should they draft a kicker?
That's a great question. I don't know that they should draft one. They definitely should sign one.
Is it a great question honestly, or a sad question?
Well, I was thinking about this the other day. The kicking position, they've really been searching for a long-term kicker, basically almost as long as they've been searching for a quarterback. And obviously the two things are not the same weight, but they've kind of tried a couple of different avenues at kicker as well. If you use a 7th round pick on a kicker, I don't mind it. You definitely need to come away from this draft or this weekend though with a rookie kicker in your building. I know the Colts like Spencer Schrader, but I wouldn't think of him as proven in any way. So I would go out and get somebody. There've been a lot of undrafted kickers who've turned into really, really good ones. But I don't have a problem with them taking one in the 6th or 7th round because a lot of times those picks are special teams only guys for a while anyway.
A kicker turned punter, Pat McAfee, drafted in 2009. Dave Rayner, the last kicker chosen by the Colts. You got to go back to 2005. My brain is usually fried, Joel, when I get to this week of draft week. I'm like, all right, I don't even care. So the questions are a little bit far-fetched, so I apologize up front. Would you be more surprised on the end of Thursday night if you were writing a story about the Colts drafting Ashton Genty or trading Anthony Richardson?
Oh. I'd be more surprised if they traded Anthony Richardson.
Oh, man.
You came up with a really good either or though. Man, both things would surprise me a lot.
Backfield of Genty, Taylor, and Richardson. Oh my gosh! Just start the wishbone right now. Find a linebacker and let's go.
Well, see now I know that now you're threatening me with a good time. I would love to find out what that backfield looks like. Maybe get a speed guy in the third round and put that guy on the wing, and then you can just run it 65 times a game. As much as I would like to see what that offense looks like in the modern NFL, I think Anthony Richardson getting traded, Chris Ballard has gone to such lengths to defend him, and I just don't know. This is a lot of this is sort of based on what I know or what I think I know, and what we don't know is, do the Colts agree with everybody that this draft class of quarterbacks is not good? I was just reading some draft stuff yesterday, and just sort of more reporters reinforcing that their sources are telling them that people don't think this quarterback class is very good. So, I believe Ballard when he says his philosophy is to take one, and that could obviously lead to the trade of Anthony Richardson in theory. I just don't know if this is the class that makes me think it's going to happen.
Okay, you kind of answered my question when you said surprise position to kind of lead off your this segment. Did you mean quarterback or no?
I meant defensive end.
Ooh.
/ tackle.
Okay. I don't think you're wrong, by the way. I think you and I are kind of lockstep there.
I just think that Chris Ballard cares so much about the defensive line. We've seen that over and over again. And they really did lose not a lot in terms of production. They didn't lose a lot in terms of production outside of Odengbo. Odengbo, from a pressures and quarterback hits perspective, is a significant loss. But they didn't really lose a ton at defensive tackle. It's just they did lose 700 snaps, essentially. And you've got two guys over 30. They're signed through 2026, but at their age, do you re-sign them beyond that? Defensive end, defensive tackle feels like more of a need than I think people are talking about. Now, if they believe in Samson Ebukam, maybe the true edge isn't the obvious, but I keep thinking about all those kind of hybrid defensive end, defensive tackle players like Odengbo that Ballard has drafted over the years. Is one of those coming to replace the one they lost to Chicago, and then to play him more on the inside. Because Neville Gallimore, a good low-cost signing, I don't think you can count on him to be the kind of number 3 defensive tackle that they were hoping for when they signed Raekwon Davis.
So we have Joel A. Erickson joining us on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Always great to talk to him, and not like I see him pretty much every day this time of year anyway. But, Joel, I do want to go here. So Cover 2 podcast, you and Nate Atkins at Any Star, you have this segment, Football Things That Bring Me Joy. And I know we moan and groan about the draft and, how much time we spend in the facility. But give me some joy for NFL draft coverage. What are some things that bring you joy about the NFL draft season, and particularly being in the room at West 56th Street with all of us?
I think
stroke my ego here, Joel.
I think one of the things that brings me joy is just like the first, like this year it would be the first 13 picks when we're kind of reacting to what's going on before we've really, because there's a piece of the draft where we can't really do a whole lot. It's like, oh, I can't believe this team drafted this guy. That's fun. The banter is fun. And I think one of the other things that's fun is just sort of the whatever the big storyline is that hasn't come up yet, like reacting to that. It looks like maybe it's Shadur Sanders and where he goes this year. But like the Laramie Tunsil night, I remember that one as being a big one. There have been other draft falls. The year that no one was going to take a quarterback. That kind of stuff is fun to just kind of sit there with a bunch of other people who are really locked in on it and kind of talk through. And then obviously once the draft picks start, the work starts to get really, really fast. But I think kind of the banter in the room and kind of joking about what's going on. Was it the draft a couple years ago that there was the Pacers buzzer beater?
Yeah,
last year.
year,
Nembhard
that
from Nembhard shot from Kokomo.
Yeah,
and you're not a Bucks. I mean, we know you're a diehard Brewers fan, but you're not a Bucks fan, correct? Spurs.
I'm not a mistaken.
Bucks fan. You might be the only Spurs Brewers fan I've ever heard of in my life.
I definitely am the only Spurs fan in the world. When I was like 5 years old, I decided David Robinson was my guy, and then I just never let go of the Spurs. So
respect.
Yeah, I am not a Bucks guy, but yeah, that moment was a big one last year. I think we might have been like working a little bit at that time too, if I remember right.
Well, they had traded back.
Yeah, and I was hoping they keep doing it.
They
had
traded back once, and we were hoping for another one because maybe the game went into overtime or something like that. And Joel, we will get that again Friday. Game 3 is 8:00 Friday.
Well, give me a buzzer beater because the Colts media room turned into a sports bar for about 10 minutes.
I do want to follow up real quick, Joel, on a more serious note. We did talk to Chris Ballard about the quarterback situation. What did you think of his response to, hey, what's the evaluation process with each quarterback, and then him saying, towards the end there, well, you know what, we're going to need both of them at some point if I'm a betting man. I mean, is that an injury reaction? Is that, if one guy doesn't play well, we can use the other guy? How did you kind of interpret that?
I took it as an injury reference. Going back to January when he had his postseason press conference, he said that, one of his top 2 reasons for going out and getting competition was that Richardson hasn't been able to stay healthy. I think that has kind of been forefront of his mind, over in terms of the when we were in Florida, when James and I were in Florida asking him questions about the quarterback position and Richardson in particular, he kept saying they need consistency. Well, the thing is, like, the injury stuff is part of consistency. If you are in and out of the lineup over and over again, then obviously it's not consistent for the offense. So I think that was the first thing that went to my brain was, this is a reference to injury and the likelihood that they're going to have a backup play a game at some point.
Thursday, 8:00, round 1 of the draft. Colts currently hold their 7 picks here, pretty much the middle of each round. Joel A. Erickson from the Indianapolis Star with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Joel, last one for me. We've kind of had this conversation here on our show for about the past handful of days, and I think it's part of the draft process. This is part of the draft process that I know Chris Ballard, given his scouting background, holds an extremely high regard. If we look at Anthony Richardson 2 years into it, would you say the Colts have missed more on the field with their evaluation with him or off the field?
That's a great question. I think it's on the field because I just remember that all of the talk was about him growing and developing as a player, and Ballard has said it doesn't happen right away for guys. He's preached patience like he typically does with that pick. But the fact that they brought in Daniel Jones, the fact that they said the player who's going to win this job is the one who gives us the best chance to win, is a suggestion that they're realizing that what they have essentially is a player who hasn't really developed. He's the same questions we have about Richardson now are the ones we had on the night they drafted him, and I think even with the shoulder injury, I think they were hoping for more on the field, and it's hard. The reason it's so hard to figure it out is because some of it is unknowable from our side. Like, is some of the stuff on the field the product of, not knowing, or not knowing exactly how to process defenses and when to take the short throw and when to take the long throw, that kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff that we don't really know. It's really hard for us to see. But I just think that they were expecting more strides from him as a player at this point in his career.
Joel A. Erickson, Indy Star, catches work there, and I know that you guys will all be watching draft together on Thursday night.
Yeah, I'm going to hug Joel 56. Like I did yesterday. Thanks for that, Joel. Needed it.
See, we bring you on to make James feel better about himself. That's what we do.
I'll gladly do that.
It's a great responsibility. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Joel. Have a great day.
See you Thursday, Joel.
Talk to you soon.
We'll see you.
There he is. Always good to talk to him. And it goes right back to it. Even if you're Chris Ballard and you're sending Anthony Richardson a message by saying, hey, you better get going because we got another guy here that's ready to take your job. The fact that you even have to do that, to Kevin's point overall, is you missed somewhere in that evaluation to this point in time, right?
Yeah, one thing, and I didn't get a chance to follow up on this, and this is why I have beef with Mike Chappell, who I love dearly. But, I'm trying to sneak this last question in, and Mike's doing his thing, and he's following up on, I believe it was Jalen Carlisle and his shoulder surgery. But towards the end of yesterday's presser, he was asked, about missing on picks, Chris Ballard, and he's like, was it character, was it instincts, whatever. And part of me wanted to pull at that a little bit more to say, okay, well, what is your evaluation when factoring in those categories with Anthony? Like, I wouldn't say he's been a hit so far. So I would honestly say he's probably been more of a miss. But even if you're still saying it's an ongoing evaluation, what are you looking at that you think that you might have gotten right or wrong? And then were you right on the traits? Were you wrong on the character? Were you right on the character, wrong on the like whatever? What is it about him in particular that has made this kind of an up and down roller coaster? And maybe it's, the factor that we kind of not overlook, but doesn't get talked about enough. Maybe it's the injuries. Like maybe it's just not enough time on task, but I want to hear his thoughts on that. And we'll get another chance to follow up at some point. But I'm curious to hear that maybe perhaps later in the draft or whatever, whenever he does his post-draft, breakdown, what does that mean for Anthony?
No, I think that's a good point. And again, we will hear from Ballard at all 3 days, right? I know Steichen maybe is not all 3 days. I kind of forget how the draft recaps work. One thing I did want to make sure that we
Evan
mentioned.
back here standing like the boogeyman. I'm like, you're allowed to come in, brother.
Look at Evan Sherrill from Cluster Truck right here. He's got his Pacers quarter zip ready for today.
Yeah,
do we have a Kevin Bowen burger in that bag?
It says number 6, the Kevin Bowen burger, right there.
Two
Kevin Bowen burgers.
You gotta tell us, or at least tell me. I saw your face on social media, and I was like, wait a second, you didn't tell me you had a burger.
I do see the second one.
Can I tell you about the bacon on this burger?
Yes.
We have 2 strips of bacon. We have chopped bacon. Evan, thank you very much.
Shout out Ball State, by the way.
Fan promo code there for Cluster Truck. The Kevin Bowen burger, 2 things I love about it. One, first off, the bacon. Again, 2 strips, and then chopped bacon underneath the patty. And then 2, of course, all pros, or I should say 20% of proceeds go to the IU Simon Cancer Center. So absolutely love that here. Connor Daly's got a burger as well. Jackson Lee's got a burger as well here as we get to the month of May. Happy to partner with Cluster Truck again. So if you guys would like, dabble into a Kevin Bowen burger.
I actually ordered
making
one.
it.
I literally ordered one because I wanted to try it.
Let's go.
I don't like limp bacon.
No, you don't.
No, not. And Mark, you're not getting limp bacon here.
Talking about making it, Kevin. Yeah, you got your own burger now.
Mark, you've been on the sound. Terrific today.
He's the GOAT.
And again, this is
He's rested up after all the time off lately.
This is a twist on the burger. It's a new burger from last year. Last year's burger a little bit different. This year's burger, I love. A little American cheese. I thought Maddie'd be happy. Some lettuce and tomato on the burger as well. To maybe increase the health intake a little bit there. But thank you to Cluster Truck. And again, what I love the most, 20% of proceeds go to the IU Simon Cancer Center.
Has Maddie had the Bowen burger?
Yesterday was the first day, so we have not yet consumed it. But knowing her appetite and knowing that what my palate is, I think she'll be a fan of it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Cluster Truck never misses. That's one thing I've learned already. They never, ever miss. All right, Mark, let's check it down.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by Butler Bulldogs Basketball. 2025-26 season tickets are on sale now. Registration for iconic Hinkle Fieldhouse premium seats runs through May 31st. Don't miss Hinkle Magic. Visit butlersports.com/buy tickets.
JB, I posted it with a picture of the gold out the other day. It's now on to game 2, but it is winning time in the NBA, and the Pacers are right there in the middle of it.
Yeah, I just wonder, after the Athletic, our anonymous poll, the players rated Tyrese Halliburton as the most overrated player in the league. Will that add anything to the fire he already has for Game 2? And I'm curious to see how he responds to maybe that narrative being said about him.
And just to go a little bit further on this parlay here, Pacers money line, Halliburton first quarter points, over-unders 4.5. Come on. I mean, at the end of the first quarter, doesn't he usually play the whole first quarter? Don't they usually take Siakam out early? I like that. Over 30.5 points plus assists here for Tyrese Halliburton tonight. You come up with your own little parlay off of that. I think we get a motivated Tyrese Halliburton tonight.
Is that Mark Dykton approved, that 3-legger?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, game time tonight at the Fieldhouse, 7 o'clock. Airtime here on The Fan at 6:30. Looking forward to Game 2. Last night in the NBA, the Pistons even up their series with the Knicks, 100-94. Their youngster, JB, Cade Cunningham, 33 points and 12 rebounds. Dennis Schroeder had 20 points. Dennis Schroeder, every time he shows up, he plays well in the playoffs for somebody.
Yeah, I mean, he's a pest. He had some big shots last night, and like I've been telling you all, I think Cade Cunningham is legit.
He looked like it last night. The Clippers even up their series with the Nuggets, win Game 2 in Denver with some late stumbles by the Nuggets, and Kawhi Leonard just doing his thing. Kevin, 39 points. He just shows up when it's time.
15 of 19 from the floor, just vintage Kawhi. And Norman Powell, a huge shot there late to win in Denver. So we have both of those series evened up at 1. Again, Pacers, 7 o'clock tonight, as we've mentioned all throughout the show. That is blacked out on NBA TV locally, so you will need FanDuel. You can stream it for $6.99 if you would like. Obviously, our airwaves as well. Other two games tonight, Thunder. How do the Grizzlies respond from that Game 1 shellacking, and then Lakers trying to even it up on their home floor after the T-Wolves took Game 1 from them.
All right. Major League Baseball yesterday, a shortened schedule, it being a Monday and everything. The Reds, after scoring 24, you missed the day the Reds scored 24 runs, Mark. What's that about?
What a joke.
Wasn't it a Saturday? When did they do it?
A joke.
Sunday.
Unbelievable.
Well, yeah, we're not on the air.
He was over there juicing the bats, Jeff?
No, I just find it interesting the day after they score 24.
I find it very
got things to
interesting,
do.
Jeff. I couldn't agree more with you.
Are you going to abandon being a Reds fan? Are you going to abandon following this team?
No.
Sounds like it.
No.
Went off ship. That's what it sounds like.
Miami over the Reds 6-3 yesterday, a minor setback there. As also the Indianapolis Indians were off yesterday. They will play an afternoon game on the road in St. Paul today against the Saints there. That's what's happening in the world of sports. Anything else you want to throw in there, KB?
Yeah, two things. 20% of sales to the IU Simon Cancer Center. Thank you, Evan Sherrill, for that reminder. And James Boyd, a busy-ish afternoon. If you could share with our audience, just the Colts offseason schedule will be on what, kind of a one-day-a-week cadence. Nothing on the field for us from a viewing standpoint until late May. But right now, a little media availability later today with one Anthony Richardson Sr.
Yeah, I'm excited to obviously hear from him, hear his reaction to Daniel Jones being his teammate, being pushed in that way, and then also getting his thoughts on, to Kevin's point earlier, what have you worked on from a biometric standpoint, your throwing motion, your footwork, whatever the case may be. You've done some work with Chris Hess and who's the guy who's worked with Josh Allen, his throwing motion. How's that going? And just getting an update all around on him because this is, I believe, a make-or-break year for Anthony Richardson.
All right, we'll talk about that next. Also, before the top of the hour, if you missed it, Rick Carlisle on with the guys earlier today. We'll give you some of the highlights of things he had to say getting ready for Game 2 tonight over at the Fieldhouse. That's all dead ahead on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Mark, let's make some race fans happy this morning. Sound like a plan? You got something that can help them out?
Yeah, how about a pair of tickets to the Grand Prix? How about that? Will that do anything for you?
A lot of people love that stuff, man. I don't mind going to the Grand Prix. As long as it's not like 40 degrees, windy, and about to rain all the time. That was my first experience ever at the Grand Prix. You never know. Sometimes at this time of year it can be really hot over there, too.
You could take Mom Mother's Day weekend, so Saturday, May 10th. Yes.
May 9th.
May 9th?
Yeah.
May 9th? Isn't that a Friday? I thought
that's what this information is telling me, so maybe that's not correct. I don't know.
Well, May 9th would be quals. May 10th is the actual race.
All right,
they put it in wrong.
239-1070 is the number to call. You want to get in on those tickets? Now is the time to do that. 239-1070. And we've got the entire month of May getting ready to start and coming back with Beyond the Bricks right after Trackside. That'll be daily throughout the entire month of May. And then, of course, we'll have the Grand Prix for you, then Quals Day and Carb Day and the race itself. And we'll have all kinds of 560s and tales from the track. I mean, we do it up, JB. This is going to be your first May inside the building here.
Yeah, that'll be my first time really experiencing the rush and the excitement of this. And I'm excited about it because it kind of aligns really well with like the Colts' off season. It gets a little bit slower then. So I'll be able to take some, foot off the gas and enjoy it and kind of experience, like I said, for the first time. And I'm going in blind with a lot of this stuff. So that's what a lot of people have told me to do. I haven't tried a pork tenderloin yet. It's only to wait till I get to the track and other things like that. So I'm excited.
I loved seeing yesterday, too. You get a lot of this kind of late April, early May, because, again, tomorrow we have oval testing. I know we say oval testing. It's pretty much Indy 500 practice. It begins early tomorrow and Thursday over there at IMS. But the McLaren cars sent out their liveries here for the month of May. And, boy, it's just such a slick look with those cars there. Certainly Pato Ward will once again be a fan favorite. Christian Lundgaard, Nolan Siegel, the other cars there with Aaron McLaren. I love their colors. The papaya orange, as they call it there, on their cars. So always enjoy that kind of late April, early May, seeing those come out here for the 33 days from now, the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500.
33 days. It sneaks up on you, doesn't it? Sneaks up on you. 33 is fitting. Have you ever experienced a bump day?
I haven't experienced any of it. Seriously. I don't even know. Like, I have to, look up what a lot of stuff means. I told you I didn't even know what carb day really was until I Googled it. I thought it was about bread or something. And so I've learned since then carbonator. So, like I said, I'm excited to experience it and just to continue to embrace the Indiana community, Indiana culture, Indianapolis culture. This place feels like home, honestly, not to get too much on my soapbox, but more so I think now than it ever has, just because I've experienced so many different things here.
All right, a little college football news to tell you about. Obviously, transfer portals are open. Kids continue to shift schools and whatnot. It feels like now the Nico Iamaleava is basically a trade for Joey Aguilar out at UCLA, the old UCLA quarterback going back now to Tennessee after Tennessee's quarterback went to UCLA. And then we're all waiting for the House decision to decide what the rules are actually going to be moving forward on how much money you can give guys, what the NIL is going to look like, what teams are going to have to spend, all that kind of stuff. So it's still a little bit of the wild, wild west for a couple of weeks.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the NCAA messed themselves up by not being proactive in the past when it came to paying players and cutting them on certain salaries and things like that. And now you kind of reap what you sow. But I'm curious to see what guardrails kind of get put up. But in the meantime, I guess we just keep paying attention to the transfer portal and where guys go. So that'll certainly be interesting topic going forward.
Portal closed, right? Basketball portal closed today, I think. Yep. Indiana still needs, I would guess, 4 or 5. I don't know, somewhere around that number. I think Purdue, for the most part, is done. Butler, I would think, still probably needs a little bit more. So when I say close, it means you can't enter after today's date. So obviously still decisions to be made. But, yeah, basketball closes today. I think football is later this week. Mark Dykton, your consumption of the Kevin Bowen burger.
He's on it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. You did a very good job.
You got some chipmunk cheeks over there, brother.
No, yeah. It's really good. I'm trying to eat. John's pointing the sound. I'm like, hold on. Let me
like this thing down. Got a little kid Mark back there.
He's got the corner of the mouth. He's got to get dried up there. All that kind of stuff.
I hope you guys are fluent in like the, Heimlich maneuver if things go south here.
I got you, brother.
While you chew swallow, as I say to Max Bowen very often, as he seemingly wants to spit out all of his food. The movie Rudy I suggested to you, you were very skeptical on your viewing experience of it. I'd like to think the Kevin Bowen burger viewing experience, tasting experience, has gone better.
Yeah, very good. No limp bacon here at all. Very crispy, very good. You did well. You should be proud of yourself.
Should I give it a grade?
We have a couple Jackson Lee burgers as well. And yes, we have one more.
If this is a Mel Kiper grading scale, I'm giving it an A. You knocked it out of the park.
Gosh, I'd love to put you on the spot and say, can you give me a Mel Kiper voice on what you think of
Oh, you know, I got a good grade here. Got good bacon, got good cheese, got a good burger.
That is spot on. That is great.
You got to describe with some draft lingo here. Yeah. Come on. Some length, some upside.
I mean, that was on the spot. I just on the fly. Right. I can't do everything.
All right, let's check out the Jiffy Lube stat of the day so that Mark can go back to eating his burger. Gentlemen, it's NBA playoff time. The Detroit Pistons snapped the longest playoff losing streak in NBA history. We spoke about that earlier with their 194 win over the Knicks last night. The Pistons had lost 15 postseason games in a row, a streak that started with Game 5 of the 2008 Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. What was the basketball world like on May 26, 2008 when the Pistons beat the Celtics in Game 4? Well, they were coached by the late Flip Saunders, one of my favorites. Piston star Cade Cunningham was 6 years old, JP. Kevin Durant of the Supersonics had just been named Rookie of the Year. LeBron James ranked number 249 on the NBA's all-time scoring list. Cunningham has scored 54 points, grabbed 18 rebounds, dished out 15 assists in his first 2 career playoff games. Only 2 other players have recorded at least 50 points, 15 boards, and 15 assists in their first 2 postseason outings. You want to take a guess? You got it.
I'm looking at the quiz. I'm sorry.
All right.
Or the stat.
Luka Doncic with the 2020 Mavericks, and a guy we know well here in Indy, Oscar Robertson with the 1962 Cincinnati Royals. Rare air indeed for Cade Cunningham.
If I had to guess, though, blind, Jeff, I would have get LeBron. He seems to do it all. So, obviously, rare air. And shout out to Oscar Robertson, too, man. He's certainly a legend, and every time you see these lists pop up, he's usually on them.
I drive right by Oscar Robertson Drive every single day on the way to work. So, love that. In the meantime, we were talking about the Colts just a minute ago. There are still so many questions and things that you're concerned about. And as we get closer and closer, what's the other thing that really starts to come to the forefront for you, JB?
I'm curious always to see what teams do in the draft beyond picking players, meaning what trades do we see? You know, we talked about so much of the board has to do with how it falls, but if a team is willing to trade a first-round pick for an experienced player, does that change the math a bit with who you're going to pick on your board? So we can never predict those types of scenarios. And, I'm looking at a team like Philadelphia, Dallas Goedert. Does he get traded on draft night? Or Trey Hendrickson. I know there's been some stalemate there with Cincinnati. Would a team willing to try to make a deal when the pressure's hot on draft night? So that's what I pay attention to the most. And just from a fan standpoint, because I'm a fan of football, I'm always curious to see just the moments when these guys get drafted, those first few picks. And I can't really appreciate it as much when the Colts get on the board because I'm trying to work. But that top 5 certainly will be pretty special because you get to change your life, your family's lives. And selfishly, I can't wait to see where Kenneth Grant goes, the Maryville product, Michigan national champ from a couple years ago. Great kid. I covered him when he was, getting his first offer from Purdue, and now he's, days away from, having generational wealth. So excited for that.
Yeah, the Bengals picked 3 spots after the Colts. So, if they were to take a pass rusher for whatever reason, would that bring Trey Hendrickson more to the forefront as a trade candidate? I think back a couple drafts ago, I would say it was one of the more significant draft night trades, the A.J. Brown trade to Philly. It's helped Philly win a Super Bowl, and it helped derail Tennessee's regime. So now you got Tennessee drafting 1 overall, and Philadelphia's drafting 32nd overall. So
good pull, KB.
I thought that was a huge trade on draft night. So yeah, James, I'm curious about that aspect to draft night as well. AFC South-wise, obviously you got Tennessee at 1. Jacksonville is up there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I assume Houston will do something on their offensive line. I know they've also, mentioned wideout a little bit. It's not a very wideout hungry round 1 group, it sounds like this season, but Houston could go wideout as well. So just, those are probably some other areas I'll be watching for coming up Thursday night.
You talk about the draft day trades. One of my favorite moves of Chris Ballard of all time is probably the DeForest Buckner trade. Trading your first rounder for DeForest Buckner. I thought that was a fantastic move.
Yeah, certainly got the return on investment there. DeForest Buckner has been arguably their best player on defense since he's been here, and just a stand-up guy. And so, and could the Colts do that? I'm not saying it's a likely possibility, but all options are out there according to Chris Ballard.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch the rest of the week. And, of course, the draft comes your way Thursday night. Our coverage starts at 7 o'clock with ESPN Radio on Thursday night, and then the draft itself begins at 8. You guys will both be out there, I know.
Yeah, and I know we've said this quite often here, but we're juggling a lot of things this week from a sports world standpoint. Matt just asked this question. Kevin, did you say the game tonight, Pacer game that is, will be televised locally or not? I missed that part. We'll re-rack some of Rick Carlisle coming up here in a few minutes. But yes, just to remind everybody for tonight, basically treat it like a regular season Pacer game. If you're able to watch the Pacers in the regular season, i.e. you get FanDuel TV, you get Chris Teneri, Quinn Buckner, Jeremiah Johnson, you can watch it. If you don't get them normally, you're going to have to pay, I think, to stream it $6.99 to stream here. I don't know if it's a 7-day trial or what. But that's what you can get here from a viewing experience. Obviously, we'll have it on our airwaves no matter what. So, again, that is the Pacer game for tonight. And then one other item I wanted to make sure we mentioned, wanted to touch on it with Joel Erickson, but didn't have time to get to it with Joel. James, you were over there yesterday for the Chris Ballard press conference. For those that missed it, I know we mentioned it in passing. Wanted to kind of give Chris the ability to touch more on it. But I think a big reason why he moved his draft press conference from Thursday last week to Monday morning was just the unfortunate, just beyond tragic story of one of the Colts' longtime scouts who has risen up within the personnel department, Matt Turpentine. He has been with multiple regimes. His wife, Coral, tragically died earlier this month. So, it just goes without saying. They've got 2 daughters, and I know Chris said yesterday the Westfield community has really rallied around them, but I cannot imagine going through that. Bob Turpentine, Matt's father, also a longtime executive with the organization dating back to the Baltimore days. So I think some, listeners might recognize that last name. But that scouting group, the Colts released their first With the Next Pick. It's called Behind the Scenes last night. You see a lot of scouting room videos. You see Matt Turpentine, Cathedral grad, Xavier grad, in the background of a lot of those videos, and it's a very close-knit group that spends a ton of hours together. So cannot imagine going through that whatsoever, let alone this time of year. So certainly some thoughts here from all of us at the Fan to Matt Turpentine and his 2 daughters.
Lots of thoughts. Very well said, KB. Thanks so much for joining us this morning here on the Fan Morning Show. One more thing before we hit the break and get ready to hear again from Rick Carlisle. If you missed some of that earlier today, Jiffy Lube Stat of the Day brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite since 1985. More Colts and Pacers next.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Speaking of Rick Carlisle, if you missed it a little while ago, about an hour and a half ago, he was on with the boys talking about Game 2 of the Milwaukee Bucks. And as you had predicted, KB, he wasn't all that interested in really going over Game 1. He was all about what's going to happen next.
No,
right?
to be expected. Yeah. He is in full coach mode, and it's been a long wait. I mean, it's, 3.5 days? Is that right? I mean, do you guys realize, and I know Rick said in our review, the Bucks went home. The Bucks went home. When you play Saturday at 1 o'clock, you could easily fly back, and then they obviously came back yesterday.
I mean, hell, you could drive to Milwaukee and get back and make good timing.
You could do that a couple different times. So, again, it's kind of a unique twist to this series, and really all the first-round series have these pretty big gaps. So, yeah.
They do like to carry him out in the NBA. There's no question about that. One of the things that Rick Carlisle was talking about, and you brought this up, is just the playoff emergence, James, of Andrew Nembhard and how he just seems to find a different level in the playoffs. The coach addressed that.
Well, he was an experienced guy at Gonzaga. He had transferred to Gonzaga, I think, from Florida. And one thing that was compelling about him was that at the pre-draft camp in Chicago, he missed day one of the competitive scrimmage option. He had a hamstring or some kind of an ailment. And usually guys that are hurt on day one don't play game 2. But he was different. He wanted to play. He got out there on day 2, and he played his butt off. And one thing you could tell about him is that he's a guy that loves the game and loves to play and loves to compete. And so, I mean, this sounds silly, but guys that love to play, NBA basketball or love to play basketball are guys you really want to have on your team. And it sounds like an obvious thing, but not every guy loves to play the game as much as Andrew Nembhard loves to play the game, as much as Tyrese loves to play the game, and Mathurin and these guys. So, that was something that struck Kevin about him. Kevin liked him during the year too, and I believe we got him at 31. I think Oklahoma City was at 32. And there was pretty strong evidence that if he hadn't gone to us at 31, he was going to go at pick number 32. And then, if you redraft that draft, and you guys, maybe you could take a couple minutes to do that one of these days on your show, where would he be in the draft if it was redrafted? I mean, I think he'd probably be in the lottery somewhere. And so that was an important choice. And the thing that he brings to us is he just brings he's just some of everything, and some of everything equals being one of our most important glue guys. And we talked about it during the season. I mean, we were 5-10 without him early, and then when we got him back, his influence was a major factor for us as we get our season turned around, which started in December and went through the new year. Well, he was
pretty glowing stuff right there. Pretty glowing stuff.
You know what? I was thinking about this. I was actually at that NBA draft combine because I believe he was drafted the same year as Benedict Mathurin. So I was there for that, and it was a bit of a shock that he had went out there and played because so many guys. I mean, if you have it's like the NFL scouting combine. If you have any ailment, anything that could possibly mess up your stature or status or how you're perceived, guys will, as they say, duck the smoke, and he did not run from it. He went out there and played really well. I think he played himself into being where he was drafted because ultimately, if you look at it, I believe when I talked to Kevin Pritchard way back when, he and their staff were like, we view this as like another first-round pick because it's so early in the second round. And so Nembhard had like that first-round talent and older players. Maybe that's why he kind of slid. But when you look at the value of the player, what he brings to this team, they really hit that pick out of the park.
Well, and let's fast forward to tonight because, as we sit here right now, Damian Lillard questionable for tonight's Game 2. That is an upgrade from where he was listed at Game 1. Doc Rivers said he looks great, et cetera, but was non-committal on whether he would play for tonight. That's a Nembhard assignment, right?
It has to be. I think so.
Yeah. Nesmith, I think, is the other option.
Yeah, but still, you want to have all hands on deck for him.
Yeah, the only little counter to that, I'm thinking to myself, is like, would you put Nesmith on Lillard for a little bit more size and then have Nembhard just help out? He's such a great help defender. Like,
yeah,
he's so smart, and he had the couple of the times he just raked down on Giannis, and I think contributed to the one assist. That is probably one I'm watching for tonight, is that assist number. Again, been pretty adamant. I expect the Pacers to win tonight with or without Damian Lillard, but if that Giannis assist number creeps anywhere near what it was in April, which was right around a dozen per game, then all of a sudden the Milwaukee others are contributing, and now you might have a little bit more game pressure than I think was there on Saturday afternoon.
Speaking of Damian Lillard, he is questionable for tonight's game for the Milwaukee Bucks. Coach addressed that.
We have experience playing against him. That's, we gotta hearken to that, both during the season and last year in the playoffs. And so, we're familiar with his greatness and all the things that he does to make a game very difficult for the opponent. And as to whether he plays or not, we don't know. I mean, obviously, Milwaukee knows. As expected, he went questionable on the injury report up from out, and so which is the same thing they had with Giannis last year too. So it sounds like he's going to be playing at some point, and it certainly could be tonight, and we can't be surprised if he does.
It's Rick Carlisle, the head coach of the Indiana Pacers, discussing that with Kevin and James earlier today on the Fan Morning Show. And Mark, that'll be posted up on the website when?
Well, the interview's already there on our podcast, and then there'll be an article to
you got those chipmunk cheeks, Mark.
Didn't mean to interrupt that.
I am trying the Kevin Bowen burger, and it is a banger. I'll give you that. I'll give you that, my friend.
All right. The rest of the day is going to be a banger here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Jake Query comes your way at noon. J&B gets you ready for the game at 3, pregame at 6:30, tip at 7.